Sit up straight.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Cook County Board of Commissioners regular meeting today, Tuesday, May 14th. And if we'd please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So as we get started today, are there any changes or adjustments to the agenda?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
I'll support that.
Thank you, Commissioner White. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we have our public comment period. This is an opportunity for citizens to speak before the county board. At this time, the public is welcome to address the board on any matter of county concern. And when invited to speak, please speak into the microphone for clarity, sign in, and state your name, address, and the topic you are addressing. And we have a number of members of the public here, so we will, I believe, allow 5 minutes today for public comment for each individual. So is there anyone who would like to speak this morning?
Sharon Hexen-Platzer, 154 Evergreen Road, Lutzen, Minnesota. I guess I could talk to you about a number of things. And the first that I would like to bring up is the short-term emergency shelter. So in this case, I'm wearing the hat of the deputy clerk for Lutzen Township. And we're supposed to be hearing from Mr. Keyport about the availability or the delivery of a generator, and we have not heard, so I would just let you know that we're moving forward with pouring a slab and putting the propane tank on. So any time would be sufficient to give us that information, if you would. And that's it, unless you have questions for me.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Are there other members of the public that wish to speak this morning?
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Gary Latz, 179 Birch Drive, Grand Marais. And I'm here to talk about the item number 7 on the agenda, which is the transfer of the tax forfeiture parcel from the county to the city. This property has been vacant and unproductive since 2002, so we're going on 22 years. The county has received no revenue from this. There's been no mitigation of any stormwater that is coming off of that parcel, as well as surrounding parcels, and effectively it's been deemed unbuildable for various reasons. So there's no hope of having any productive use for this project. I'm working on a very high-impact project called The Heights. It's a 36-unit apartment building on the adjacent land. And we have a phase 2 that we're hoping to develop also for another 24 units in the future. So we're talking about 60 units of potential housing. The current one, the phase 1 that we are actively working on, will have 50%, 18 of those units will be deemed affordable. And so it's a very high impact project for the city and the county. With our friends at Soil and Water and our engineering company, MSA, we've developed a stormwater mitigation plan for our site, The Heights, and that includes this tax forfeiture parcel. That plan costs about $160,000, and or will cost about $160,000, and so it's a substantial improvement to the infrastructure of the city and in the county at this point. enabling, the request is that the Heights will be able to build the stormwater pond, which is a portion of the stormwater plan, on the site. That will help immediately, because right now, a significant portion of the runoff from our site, as well as adjoining sites, is going untreated, unmitigated into Lake Superior to begin with. So we will help with that immediately, and the pond will be expandable. So in the future, we will be able to help with other areas of stormwater from other surrounding properties. Finally, one of the permitted uses of a transfer of this property is to enable affordable housing. So bingo, I think we've rung the bell here by taking an unusable parcel for almost anything else and turning it into something that is all very near and dear to all of our hearts, affordable housing. So all the stars are aligning, and our request is that you look upon this favorably and help enable the transfer of this property from the county to the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public that wish to speak this morning? Any other members of the public that wish to speak? Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Arvis Thompson, District 4, East End, Colville. By placing the Judicial Center on hold until you had enough information to make a well-thought-out decision, I think you said to the taxpayers, we can slow down and do what's best for a positive outcome. Is there any reason to have to jump into this new idea without having answers to the questions you know your public is going to ask? I'm talking about the capital improvement plan dealing with public health and human services. Let's look at how long it has taken to get to now with the capital improvement plan. Sometime back in 2021, a question was asked about the repairs and maintenance of county buildings. In February of 2022, a report was presented to the county from CRBPS called Capital Improvement, not capital expansion, capital improvement. A mislabeled schedule called deferred maintenance told you what needed to be done to starting in 2023 to bring your buildings up to snuff. To date, there hasn't been one thing accomplished. No one could explain what deferred maintenance was back then. According to the schedule, and there were no answers forthcoming. It took forever to get any answers on what deferred maintenance meant. It's middle of 2024 and we're still talking. Clearly that report didn't give you what you told us you were looking for. Beginning on page 110 of today's agenda is a discussion of the capital improvement plan focusing on public health and human services. There is a timetable that takes us from today to August 13th when the study is presented to the board for discussion. This means there is only more planning and discussion in the next several months with a few people. Before the presentation is then made to the board for your review and input, and then it goes off, hopefully, to the public. Have you considered that there are major items that impact this project, and now is your best opportunity to look at these items to fully understand what you're going to ask of your taxpayers? I'm referring to the staff that we have in Public Health and Human Services, Law Enforcement, and the County Attorney's Office, that a fair number of taxpayers consider an overload, and they will question. Today would be a good day to put this new dream into the next committee of the whole for a large discussion. Start to explore all the questions and doubts you will face when this goes forward to the public. The public will not accept another plan with no answers. It's unfair to ask your consultant to create a document unless you have enough detail to guide them to complete it satisfactorily so it can stand up to taxpayer scrutiny. There's enough coming in the future that requires your individual undivided attention. Implementing the rebuild construction on your most recent bonded projects, dealing with retirement of a key position in this whole issue of building upkeep, repair, and maintenance, Brian Silence, getting to the underlying problems of staff turnover, 86 people in the previous 2 years. That has got to set Cook County apart and beg the question, why? It's been 3 years since the concern for building repairs started. Another few months to get the act together can only be time well spent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Are there other members of the public that wish to speak this morning? Anyone else? All right, at this time, we'll close our public comment period and move on to our consent agenda. Are there any items the commissioner may wish to pull? Commissioner White?
I would like them to at least be addressed. There's a lot of information, and I think that the public would be interested in knowing that who the contractors were that got the bids for the different roads, and who's getting a liquor license, and, I've got to get down a little farther here. And there was one more. The gambling permit request. It's just information, but I think it's information that the public would just say, oh yeah, I heard that. And that's about it. But having all of this, it also includes many resignations and hires and retirements in the consent agenda. So unless you actually read it, the public does not know who's leaving and coming and that type of thing. And I just think we don't need to discuss it, but we should verbally tell people who are, well, particularly those people who take the time to listen to this meeting, either now or when it's taped later. It's my 2 cents.
All right, and as I've done, thankfully for, with your comment, Commissioner White, I will go through those consent agenda items so people are aware of them.
Okay.
So we have our claims, we have minutes from our April 23rd meeting, we have contract awards for summer maintenance, and the public should be aware that some of the contracts, there were multiple bidders on, others there were just one, but we are required by statute and by our ordinance to accept the one that comes in. We have a temporary liquor license application, and that is for the Lutzen Bicycle Race. Superior Cycling Association has requested that. We have the hire of Morgan Starkey as Public Safety Telecommunicator Jailer, approval of Jesse Johnson as our Land Use Specialist, approve the retirement of Paul Bernier, resignation of Elis Walch, the retirement of Warren Hagen, the retirement of Brian Silence, and our gambling permit, which is for gambling activity for the Violence Prevention Center to conduct a raffle. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? We have one. Is there a second?
Motion to approve.
And we have support. All right, so any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to item number 4, the Caribou Lake Surface Water Ordinance.
Good morning.
Good morning, Administrator Yorkie.
Sorry, a little preoccupied. Okay, so we started this process back in 2022 when we were approached by property owners from Caribou Lake who were interested in establishing an ordinance to restrict wake surfing on the lake. The reasons for that requested ordinance are well documented. The activity would cause degradation of water quality, wildlife habitat, shoreline erosion, and would also interfere with other uses or other users on the lake. And because of the size of the lake, it's not really a good thing to have there. There are other lakes that are larger where that kind of activity would have less of an impact. But in this instance, it would not be a good thing for all the reasons I've just said. So we submitted an application to the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. After some consideration, we were notified recently that they have approved that ordinance. And so today, the request is for the board to approve the ordinance. We did have a public hearing on this back in March of last year. So we have followed all the statutory requirements to get this in place. And so the last piece is for the board to approve the ordinance now that MDNR has approved it.
Are there any questions for Administrator Yorkie or any comments? Is there a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, I just would like to comment, though, first. It's been a long trip, hasn't it? But, I think in a way it's good that the DNR really took a while to look into this because this lake is most unusual. We probably have other unusual lakes in the county, in the state, and probably in the country. So by setting this aside to say nothing should happen on this lake because of the depth and because of the shoreline and because of everything that Administrator Yorkie mentioned, it's really important that we support this and move forward with perhaps other situations in the county in the future. But thanks for all of your work, too, and we'll move forward and onward with this.
All right. Any other comments?
Madam Chair, one other comment I'd like to make is there were a number of people involved in putting the information together for the application, but I want to especially recognize Fred Morris, who is the person that I've worked with most closely. He has done just an amazing job documenting all the reasons, looking at research studies to support the argument for establishing the ordinance. And really, the fact that we're here today requesting your approval of it is in large part due to Fred's work. So thank you, Fred.
Commissioner?
Madam Chair, could we talk a little bit about the graphic at the end?
Surely.
I found that to be potentially confusing. This ordinance is putting significant restrictions on, and yet, based on the graphic, it looks like wake surfing is permitted within that yellow area there. And so, it's defined here as it's permitted if it's 500 feet from other watercraft, and so my assumption is that little yellow area there could be 500 feet from either the shoreline or other watercraft, and that is the case.
There is a small area in the large pool where that would be allowed. But again, the size of the lake, that sign does kind of overstate the area where that activity could occur. And I agree with you, that is confusing, and I'll talk with Fred about that and see if we can maybe get something. I think the intention there was to indicate that in this particular part of the lake, there's a small area where it could happen, but I think it overstates the amount of space available for that.
Well, and if indeed they're saying, okay, we've got all this water, but we've got this much you can water?
When you get there.
Well, how do you get to that? I don't know anything about it. But how do you identify with buoys? I mean, how do you identify that space so people stay inside that area? It just seems like asking for trouble. That's just, but if this is what it is,
I should mention, the graphic is a draft, and I can certainly provide feedback to the property owners that maybe we need to refigure that. And the other thing is, the property owners have agreed to pay for the signage, so that's not something the county will have to pay for.
Commissioner.
Is the graphic necessary?
is any.
It's not part of
Why don't you come forward and speak to the microphone? Yes. And thank you before our meeting for indicating you'd be available for this.
Sure, yeah. And I didn't want to take up your time with a long speech with information you've already heard, out of respect for your time. But as James pointed out, there is a small portion of the lake where wake surfing is permitted under the ordinance as drafted. It's more than 20 feet, more than 500 feet from shore. So that little area meets the requirements of the ordinance. However, even in that zone, you need to be more than 500 feet from other watercraft, which is maybe hard to do. So I think the graphic is important for someone that shows up at the public boat landing with no knowledge of the ordinance. They see the sign, so okay, now I'm aware of the ordinance, but they have no idea how to comply because they don't know where 30 feet of depth is or 20 feet, or they have no sense for that. So I think the graphic is really important to show them, okay, here's the area where if you really still want to go, that you're permitted to go, and I think it will further compliance. I think if they don't have the graphic, they're just going to go out and maybe make assumptions and, oh, just stay in the middle. So I think it is important. It isn't perfect and precise, but it's better than nothing.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sullivan,
Commissioner.
why allow it at all?
Well, you know, there, you certainly could do that. That is not the ordinance that evolved with the DNR, and there is some research suggesting 20 feet kind of is a threshold. Below 20 feet, there's less impact from wake surf boats. So that's kind of where that number came from. You know, it's not a bright line. Certainly, it's the impact lessens proportionally as you get deeper. It's not like you get to 20 feet and there's no impact. It's just at the point where some researchers have said it's, you know, more de minimis and has not much of an impact, so.
And just so that the public is aware, we cannot enact an ordinance that is more stringent than what the DNR allows.
Thank you.
So it's very important to know that. Commissioner?
So how do they get to that yellow area that's in the middle? That's the ascribed distances to be less impactful. How do they get there? Do they swim out with their water board or do you pull it?
Well, they can, it's possible. I mean, my belief is that for most of them that do this a lot, they'll say, this just isn't worth it. I mean, this is not a place I should be, and that's really the bottom line.
Oh.
It's really not a lake that's suitable for wake surfing, but if they really want to, they can go out in their boat. These boats take on ballast in order to achieve the big waves, so they could go out slowly to the yellow zone, take on their ballast, and do their wake surfing, as long as they stay more than 500 feet from other boats in that zone, and then they could motor back at low speed, not creating big wakes, to the boat landing. So it is possible. It's just not an ideal wake surfing experience.
Thank you. Good explanation. Commissioner Hagen.
Yeah,
Johnson.
Whatever I am, I don't know. Thank you. And I really do appreciate all the research that went into this before, because I was the one that was kind of concerned we were restricting activities and this would spread. But now I'm curious, because we had to go through the DNR. Are they going to update their rules? Do you know? Since we were the first county to do this, and they were looking. Did
As far
you
as I know,
have conversations?
not. I mean,
Okay,
Your administrator might know more, but from what we understand, no.
Okay.
This is a one-off proposition, although I think there will be many other lakes that will find this very interesting and may want to follow suit to the point where the DNR might just say, well, this is crazy, I've got all these people coming at me, different lakes, let's think about a comprehensive statewide ordinance. And Vermont has done that. There's
okay. That's what,
some precedent for that. And again, just to be clear, we're not opposed to wake surfing, just it's not appropriate on this lake.
right,
You
and
need to go to a
that's
place,
important to
yeah,
continue to remind people.
Yes,
That it's
yes.
this lake, and it doesn't mean that that's a bad thing to do
correct,
in the right places.
exactly.
Madam
Any
Chair, I'd
other-
like to make a motion to approve this ordinance with just more accuracy in the graphic.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate all your work. All right, we'll move on to the Community Center Extension item, which is about a ball field fence. And I see that Sarah Waddle is with us this morning. Good morning.
Morning.
We just have a request on the agenda here for some repair work to the fence at the Little League ball field, which is the ball field on the community center campus. If you've been back there recently, you've probably noted it's leaning heavily in sections, and one part is kind of held together with a ratchet strap, which is not ideal for longevity of the fence. We did have a fencing contractor come out and take a look with Brian Silence and Jim Wallner and myself, and they're able to fix up part of the fence and still keep a good section of it. So this is not a request to replace the entire fence, just fixing up the section that's really heavily leaning, as well as fixing up the entrance, changing where the entrance is for mowing equipment, because right now the mowing equipment has to go up this sort of steep incline and make a quick turn, and it's difficult to get in and out safely. So the quote came back just a slight bit over what we have saved up in the reserve account for the ball field. So we're just requesting funds from the overall building fund to cover the rest of the cost of this project, so that we can get this project done this year and have the fence in tip-top shape for all of the community programs that happen out there.
Are there any questions for Sarah?
I don't have
Right.
a question, but the field is called the Pappy Wright Field.
Yep,
It's known as the Pappy Wright Field, not the
Yep.
Little League Field. I
there's a
mean,
big
it's
sign
dual,
that,
but-
Yep.
that fell down in a windstorm last year, and we're still figuring out how to get that sign back. Yep.
Other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the repairs to the ball field fence.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
I'll support that.
Thank you, Commissioner White. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much, and we'll look forward to seeing that get replaced. All right. Item 6 on our agenda is the Highway Department, and we have Robbie Hass here. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
So today, we are going to talk about our heated storage facility up on our campus. There's kind of a lot that I included in attachments that came out of some discussions we are having in different committee meetings, and we thought it was important to just kind of start at the beginning. Where did this project start? How has it gone over the last couple of years of talking about this? How does it fit into the CIP? And where we're at now. And so a quick, if we skip to the end of everything, what I will be recommending is awarding this project to Rice Lake Construction Group and its subcontractors. The bids came in higher than our estimate, but we do have funds available within the Highway Department. So I'm not asking for more money or for additional funds or anything like that. We have funds within our budget that can ensure we can complete this project and it doesn't affect our transportation plan, meets the long-term needs of our department, and it follows the CIP. So that's kind of the end. If we go back to the beginning real quick, I'm not going to read this word for word unless you want me to. Assuming no. Okay, good. So real quick, we've been working on this now for the last couple of years. And really, it started kind of in conjunction with the CIP. And so while, we talked about this a little bit, this building isn't specifically mentioned in the CIP, we kind of joke that the spirit, the essence of it really is. Space needs, equipment space needs were identified in the CIP at the Highway Department.
Commissioner Sullivan, capital improvement plan?
Correct, capital improvement plan, that's right. And so we really have been talking about this for a couple of years. We've discussed this in our highway advisory meetings, building committee meetings. And so what kind of came out of that was three specific areas, really. One is protecting county assets. We have a multi-million-dollar equipment fleet. But when you talk tandem trucks, when you talk loaders, pickups, pick a thing, that's a lot of money. And we need to protect that the best way that we can. We're not talking about building a Taj Mahal. We're not talking golden toilets. We are talking heated storage facility to help us do our jobs, basically. Environmental impacts, another one. We store a lot of equipment outside, and so that equipment leaks. And so now you have those fluids going straight into the ground as opposed to being captured, in a building. And then kind of the last point was labor efficiency. Right now, our second mechanic bay is used as storage, so we can't do our jobs. And so really building a new facility, and if you've seen the Goebel packed in the winter time, it takes about 3 to 5 pieces of equipment to move before we can actually get the trucks out and the graders out. And it's a testament to our drivers that building hasn't suffered more damage, because we're literally talking inches with these pieces of equipment that are massive, shuffling them in and out. That was kind of the three things we talked a lot about, because this started as cold storage building and then pivoted to heated. So that's where this kind of came from. But why heated? That's another question that comes up a lot. Why? Well, you can think in the winter, those vehicles accumulate quite a bit of snow and ice. And for our drivers to chisel that off every single day after work and then potentially before work is impossible. That's not happening. The other option would be to drive them into a mechanic's bay to let them defrost. You can imagine how long that would take. And so really we're talking time, we're talking efficiency in that regard. And that's just chiseling the exterior stuff. When it gets cold enough, which we know it does up here, diesel becomes more viscous, oil does, hydraulic fluid, all those things. And so the mention of block heaters has been brought up. Well, that's good for the engine, but nothing else. And then lastly, I mentioned kind of all these things kind of tie back to response time for us. We can store everything outside, and it'll take us 3 days to defrost it all, and then finally get to a storm that happened, earlier in the week. And so we don't want that. Nobody wants that. I think a lot of people wish we could do things faster. That's kind of, those three parts were kind of the biggest part of why heated in that regard. And so really where that led us then was to our proposed building. It's 60 feet by 100 feet. It's very similar in size and makeup to actually our Hovland garage, if you're familiar with that one. 2 bays we made specifically larger for greater storage. Greater the equipment, not more storage. And then the 2 remaining bays are targeted to house steamer trucks, pickups, loaders, other equipment, implements, just trying to fit as much as we can inside. Like I said, when we can take stuff out of our mechanics bay, we can take stuff out of the Goebel building, that improves all the things I had just talked about. The structure is proposed with in-floor heating, an air exhaust system, a small bathroom, and storm utility connection as well. So the project estimate was $1.7 million when we started. Bidding history, so this last September of '23, we let it out for bid. I opened them up, and we got one bidder, and it was $2.8 million. So it's north of $1 million over what we thought it was going to be. At our recommendation, this board rejected that bid, rightfully so. We said, well, let's go back to the drawing board and see what's going on. And so there's some other attachments beyond this, but we put it back out for bid in a different contracting format. We received 14 individual bid packages, which was great. We had at least one bidder in each of those categories, so concrete, HVAC, earthwork, that type of thing. We had one bidder in each of those, open bids this last April, and actually the cost came down, but it was still, about $2.5 million, so more than we thought it was going to be. That began the value engineering process. I know sometimes that has a bad connotation to it. It is good if you do it correctly. Again, it eliminates golden toilets. But in this regard, that's not what we were talking about. And so when you look at the attachments, you'll see some of the recommendations were removing waterproofing, eliminating roof eaves, removing insulation, and removing other heating things that we had discussed. After talking internally, after talking with our administration, after talking with our consultants, really any of those savings we thought would just be detrimental to the long-term maintenance and durability of the building. It's not going to meet our needs, and it's going to cause more headaches than we want to deal with. Funding breakdown. And so we're kind of pivot to where's the money? How does this work? That is quite a bit over what our estimate was. Where is this coming from? So the original 1.7 is funded through a split between our state aid funds and our undesignated fund balance. So we get money from the state every year to do construction on our state aid highways, so roads 1 through 23. And then our undesignated fund balance is cash we have at the highway department that we use during construction. If we get a lot of grant money that's reimbursable, we're on the hook for it until we get the grant money. And so while that does look like a lot, it gets eaten up very quickly during construction season, but then gets built back up. It's good to have that. We need to do that. Otherwise, a lot of the grants that we have been awarded over the last few years, we wouldn't be able to use. And so you kind of think about it in those terms. But you can see a breakdown of our fund balance. The two highlighted areas I want to focus on, though, is the local bridge and the local road program. Before we receive our 2024 allocation, you can see there's about $800,000 in the local bridge program and a little over $110,000 in the local road program. Do you want me to go over each of those categories, or we're good still? Good?
I think we're good.
Okay, just checking. What's nice is in the 10-year transportation plan, because we've been able to get ahead a little bit as far as grants and bonds and other outside funds, in the 10-year plan, we aren't scheduled to use any of those funds. And so, which is great, but they're there in case. And so you can see, though, that there's a breakdown. This is just in the last few years of bridge projects specifically. We've been able to bring in about $9.5 million in outside funds. So that's funds that didn't come from Cook County, they came from elsewhere, and we're still able to do a lot of work. Why do we need the money then? What's the point? If we're getting all this grant money, why do we need this money? Recently, there's a culvert inventory, I think we've talked about that on and off, that showed about 1,200 culverts in Cook County that we are responsible for, and that doesn't include your driveway pipes. Those pipes vary in size. We internally at the Highway Department have the capacity to change culverts up to about 4 or 5 foot in diameter. And so that still leaves culverts larger than that need to get replaced. And, if they're on a paved road, if they're buried very deep under, a road, we have to call somebody. And so with that, rough estimate put that to about 400 culverts that we need to call somebody for. And that doesn't include the bridge inventory. So the question about do we need those funds in a bridge, in a local bridge fund? Absolutely. For that, that's one big reason. Another one is match requirements on grants. Sometimes if we get a federal grant, it's an 80-20 split, meaning 80% federal, 20% local. I guess that's one example. I could go on, but we'll stop right there. So where does that leave us? What we're proposing right now to do this project is really utilizing part of the fund balance in the bridge fund, along with reallocating our 2024 budgeted line items for road and bridge to compensate for the higher than expected cost of the building. You can see the breakdown right there. Basically, that would then leave us with about $500,000 still in the local bridge fund. And so really, if something really came up in the next year, we'd still be able to do it. That would be fine. And then after that, the allocation resumes again. So doing this, like I mentioned at the beginning, it does not impact the levy at all. It addresses our long-term space needs at the Highway Department while being aligned with the county's capital improvement plan, and it doesn't impact any planned projects. And so do you all have any questions? That was a lot of information. I know there's a lot here.
I can just say I'm really excited about this. I remember first going through all the buildings at the Highway Department and thinking, oh my gosh, we really need some improvement here. So I am pleased that over time, we're looking at this option. Commissioner Hawkins?
Yeah, I just want to thank you. We had some really good discussions at the Highway Advisory Committee meeting, my favorite committee. And I want to thank you for the detailed report that you put together for the public today to explain the background and the need for this, and your thoughtfulness in thinking about the levy dollars and best use of that while not impacting future cash needs. So I appreciate the work you put into documenting this information for the public.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Mills?
So is there going to be some office space in that high eave area?
Yeah, mine, it overlooks
Okay,
Lake Superior, yes. No.
Well, on that note, then I'd like to make a motion to approve the Highway Department's Heated Storage Facility Award to Rice Lake Construction Group.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
I'll support that.
Thank you, Commissioner White. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, thank
Thank you,
you.
Madam Chair, while Robbie's here, could we maybe go to item 12A?
Surely. All right, because we have Robbie here, we'd like to jump an agenda item just as Assessor Thompson sits down.
You can stay there.
Bob, you're good. You're good.
Just, Robbie, if you'd come back for 12A.
Sure.
And
We'd love to.
That's kind of important.
so item 12A concerns the reappointment of the highway engineer, Robbie Hass. He's been with us since August of 2020. Per statute, initial appointments of highway engineers may last from 1 to 4 years. After that, if they're reappointed, it's for a 4-year term. I think it's well-known among members of the board and the public that Robbie's doing his job at a very high level. He's accomplished a lot since getting here and really established systems and processes to improve the performance and efficiency of the highway department. And so the request today is to reappoint Robbie for a new 4-year term.
Well, I would like to move that we reappoint our highway engineer, Robbie Hass, to a new 4-year term. Is there support? Support. Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Get to work.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
I think he's blushing.
I think he is, and I don't know that I've seen that before. You're a little red. All right, now Assessor Thompson, welcome and thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I am actually here in the capacity of the Land Commissioner today, bringing forward a request that came from the City of Grand Marais to convey a parcel that's held in tax forfeit. This parcel has been forfeited since 2002, and it's kind of challenged with the access and utilities that there's not much available to it, so there's not a lot of usefulness of this land other than maybe to adjacent property owners. And this will end up being part of the development plan on the apartments up there. So we do have Gary Latz, if there's any questions about, how this will be incorporated in as a stormwater retention pond for the apartment project up there on the hill. I did put forward a resolution, and I didn't run this by Attorney Hickens, so I don't know if she's had a chance to look it over, if she has any thoughts about it. I do want to just make a suggestion under the second whereas. The statute is 28201 subdivision 1A D1 is the correct statute for, the county board can determine a less than market value sale price if it's as part of a plan to promote or create affordable housing.
Thank you so much. Any remarks you'd like to share, Attorney Hagen?
I did review the resolution. My only question would be whether, Assessor Thompson, you have any recommendation for the board as to what they should set the price at?
I don't have a recommendation. Oftentimes when you see something less than market for something like this, it's just $1, just to kind of, to put the lowest price possible. I do know that, if this parcel is not put to the intended use within 2 years, it does revert back to the state and tax forfeiture. So the sale price, purchase price is really up to the county board. Depending on which deed the state issues, there may be a fee involved, like it can be up to $250 plus deed tax, but in certain situations, I think it's just given for free, and there's no charge from the state for those deeds, but that's just another heads up. You could set the price at an amount that would cover that fee.
Thank you. Any questions for Assessor Thompson?
Yeah.
Commissioner Hawkins?
I'm wondering about the tax forfeiture laws of Minnesota and the Supreme Court case and how that may affect this, if it would in any way.
Yes, that's a very good question. So right now, the way they're rewriting the tax forfeiture laws, there's a two-part fix to what they're proposing. So there's going to be a global settlement, a class action lawsuit that goes back, any forfeiture, back to June of 2016, I think is the date. That's the cutoff for the class action lawsuit. Anything prior to that, there's no current lawsuit or litigation ongoing. There's a question of whether or not those people may have a claim, but the attorneys that were working on the class action lawsuit determined that the 6-year look back was the cutoff and that they were comfortable with that. And then the other part of the changing the way forfeitures work moving forward will be taking over, starting with forfeitures and non-payment moving forward after January of 2025. So this is a parcel that falls into the previous laws where, there are statutes under 282 for how they can be managed and different things that can be done, but it will fall under those old tax forfeiture laws that we currently are still in place, and there hasn't been any bills passed as of right now, but let's just say those bills had passed and the laws had changed, it wouldn't affect this parcel because it had forfeited in 2002.
All right, thank you for clarifying that.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other questions for Assessor Thompson? Commissioner Mills?
And maybe this is going to go to Gary, not Bob, but I'm just curious about the larger implications for like the neighborhood or the surrounding community, if it could also be utilized as the stormwater runoff. How much work has already been done with soil and water? And I understand it's a high price tag to start the process, so I understand that there's maybe not all the answers that I have questions for, but
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Mills. On the graphic that you have, the aerial photo, the land to the west of the tax forfeit parcel does slope down to the east also. And should there ever be any development in that direction, then that overflow could go to the stormwater pond, and the stormwater pond could be expanded to create more capacity. Now, there are no plans that anybody knows about, that I know about anyway, that call for any other development there, but that would be the direct answer to your question. It's all based on downhill, and anything that occurs downhill from this stormwater pond can't be affected, and can't be mitigated by that.
thank you.
Are there other questions? So one of the things I've been thinking about, this benefits our community. We are looking at an opportunity for housing. We know that the stormwater pond, when built, can help other properties. It helps Lake Superior. And so I would like to make a motion to consider the request by the City of Grand Marais to acquire the tax forfeit parcel for $1. Is there support?
Support?
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Any further discussion? Commissioner Mills?
Just want to point out that this is public land that we're transferring to a public entity, and what both of those things mean is our community, and we're really looking for community-based solutions here, and I think this is a appropriate request, and I'm hoping for, whereas I support the efforts of the Heights, I'm hoping also to be able to utilize this public land for other neighborhood projects potentially. In particular, I have my eyes on just the creek there. I know that the DNR is a fan of making catch basins, ponds to slow the flow. I know that's off of this property, but I'm just trying to look at that bigger picture here. But thank you for asking about this, and thank you, Assessor Thompson, for working on this.
All right, we have a motion and support. Any additional discussion or questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you all.
both.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to land services. I see that Director Nelson is with us, and he's here to talk about a forklift replacement at our recycling center. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, we have a replacement request here for a forklift that's been running for us since 1996. Actually, we didn't buy it new then, but it has served us very well over the decades, and we do have this in the budget. And as I kind of indicated in the report to you, I know there was a previous request to discuss and put together the capital or equipment replacement plan. And suffice it to say that, yes, I will be finishing that up. And through the course of the budget process, I think it would probably be a good idea not only to talk about the equipment and replacement, and we're almost at about 100% of the amount of funds needed for replacing all of the equipment. So we're almost at a point of being flush with replacing that. This request and the money that I have budgeted will increase that fund by about 10 grand. But I think maybe during a COW meeting later on, be able to discuss that. Not only that, but the dynamics of the recycling process or the recycling program itself, and how the different types of materials and redemption values have adjusted over the course of the years, and some of the commodities in which we have had received substantial amount in the past we're like paying for now to get rid of and such. And so it's been a really dynamic field over the last couple decades. So I think that would be helpful. But the request before you today is simply to replace a forklift that is in the budget. And we do have a quote for that in the cost of $24,778 delivered from Clark.
Thank you. Are there questions? Commissioner White?
And where will the existing one go? Will you be able to sell that off or keep it in just in case the new one breaks?
Right, Madam Chair and Commissioner White, that's a good question, because we do have, there are state statutes that deal with the disposition of the equipment that we have, and we currently do have. We're sitting on some trailers. We have some semi-trailers. We have some of those flatbeds with the recycled bins. We have tried in the past to do sealed bids for some of those, and some have been successful, some not. So we do have kind of a little bit of stock out. We do need to clean that out, clear it out. The maintenance costs, and that's one of the biggest issues on this particular forklift itself. The maintenance cost in and of itself is really surpassing its value to us. And so, I'm not really sure in terms of the disposition. We couldn't get a trade-in value on it. So how we do have to go, I don't see really holding that in reserve too much. I mean, it'll sit there until we decide what it is that we can do with it. But it would probably either have to go by virtue of an auction or closed bid.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
I'm just thinking, the highway department uses that
Right.
auction a lot for,
Yep.
and they got really good money for equipment that was not very good. So you may want to check with the highway department and say, if you have a surplus of equipment you need to get rid of, at least try that. I think it looked better than sealed bids and from the
Yes.
paper, so.
Yeah, and I have talked to Robbie about the semi-trailers to see if there at least was any need for them for storage of parts or anything like that in there. I had not spoken with him about the forklift, but yes, we'll certainly be having a discussion with him.
All right, other questions? Commissioner Storley?
Thank you. Could it be used for parts and pieces for the new one, or is it too old for that even?
Yes, the designs have changed substantially since 1996, between that and the ones they have now.
Yeah.
Very much more streamlined. These are like propane run, they're really good. We had a problem in the past with the carbon monoxide buildup of operating the vehicles, the forklifts and stuff like that indoors, and so that's why we have to keep, stuff open if we're doing any, the internal combustion type engines on that. So the new ones are much, much better with that respect, and yeah, there's not a lot, except for like the forks or the exterior parts, but there's not too much of that.
Is there any problem that due to increases in freight surcharges, that'll be more than 24,778?
No, that's the price delivered at the center
As of now.
itself.
Okay.
Yep.
So it better not
they did-
dilly-dally.
Well, and actually, in my previous discussion with them, the delivery charge is usually smaller, so that's already incorporated. An increase for the delivery cost has already been incorporated into that 24,778.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Any other questions? Commissioner Mills?
Do you consider an electric forklift? When you said emissions, it was like ding.
Yeah. We have had those discussions. We actually purchased the same model some years ago, some years ago, I'll just say, the exact same model, and it's worked famously for us. I mean, it's the success of all the functioning, and the emissions are like nil on it. So that and the power and the strength that we've needed with it has sufficed it enough to have us kind of go with that same model. Plus, that's the first one that kind of came out of the hopper with the price bracket that we were looking at as well.
Good question. Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the purchase of the forklift for the recycling center.
Thank you. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you
very
so much.
Thank you.
All right, we have Human Resources on our agenda. I see that Allison Plummer and Sheriff Eliason are both here to talk about the approval of a job description and a job grade. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. We're tag teaming today. Yeah. All right, so on our board agenda today, we are requesting approval of, I wouldn't necessarily call it a new position, but in the sense that we are requesting approval of an actual job description for this position. I guess you could consider it a new position in that sense. It is a deputy sheriff / investigator position. This position has been budgeted. Pretty soon I'll just hand it over to Pat and he can go in and do his presentation, so I won't give away everything. But this position has been budgeted and it has been discussed at the Personnel Committee a couple times. The Personnel Committee has gone through, reviewed the job description that has been approved and sent back by DDA. So we've gone through that whole review process, the grading process. And next steps with the support of the Personnel Committee is to bring forth that approval of the actual job description, thus actually creating this position, and then next steps would be actually filling the position. But we wanted to bring Pat forth, Sheriff Elias forth to the board today to just give a little kind of background information on this position, to make sure that you have all of the facts about this position and why we're requesting this approval.
All right, thank you, Allison.
All right.
Thank you.
Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning. So, I guess I'll just start out by reiterating what Allison said, that this position is budgeted for. It was budgeted at a step 180. It's approved at a step 190. So the extra salary that's going to come with this position will be taken from other areas in my budget, so it will not be an increase anywhere in the 2024 budget. So I just want to make that clear. But typically, the patrol deputies complete their own investigation. So when they get assigned a call, they start the investigation, they move through the investigation, and they finish the investigation. Well, where sometimes we see trouble with that is if it's the last day for that deputy's time on, and he or she are going on 4 or 5 days off. Well, if this investigation is important enough where it needs to keep moving, then it becomes assigned to somebody else, and it becomes assigned to somebody else, and pretty soon you have 4 and 5 deputies getting into one specific investigation. That is one of the troubles we have, because then you have 4 or 5 different reports, you have 4 or 5 different opinions, you have 4 or 5 maybe sometimes contradicting opinions or contradicting reports that the county attorney needs to sort through, and it makes it more difficult for them to do their job, especially for some of the more important investigations. In getting to the more important investigations, there are specialty areas that we need to concentrate on, especially with some of the changing legislature for search warrants, social media, things. The deputies do a good job with that, but we can do better if we have one person funneling all of this information, doing all of these types of investigations, so that person becomes a subject matter expert on how to collect that type of evidence, do the type of interviews that need to be done in child protection cases, adult protection cases, sexual assault cases. You know, there are special protocols that need to be undertaken and need to be completed for those investigations. So that is our impetus for creating this position and moving either an existing staff member into this position, and then when we hire, we would backfill that position. Or if nobody at the sheriff's office wants this position, we would hire it outside. We hope that there's somebody within the sheriff's office that we would like to consider for this position, and I guess that's my spiel, and I would welcome any questions.
Commissioner White.
Sheriff Elias, so that means that if you had an investigator, okay, someone goes out and gets picked up for drug possession, and could you walk me through the process and how the investigator would then, question, would the investigator then be the only person dealing with that, the person that actually made the arrest? Where would they play in it, or they play into it, or do they go on to catch more bad guys or keep us safe?
Well,
How does that work?
That would be the ultimate goal, is that, yes, somebody would make an arrest such, so we'll say drug possession for the sake of conversation. If it was going to develop into something more, where we thought maybe this person was selling drugs or trafficking drugs, yes, then that would be handed off to the investigator, because that's going to take a lot of time to get to the bottom, taking statements, doing your research, verifying facts. So then the arresting deputy would then write their report, give the facts to the investigator, and the investigator could do all the follow-up work, and the patrol deputy would be back out on the street patrolling where they should be.
And then you made the statement that if it's a longer investigation, as it were now, different deputies take over and file reports, and sometimes the reports are conflicting.
It depends on what.
So is it just a point of view, or is it different? The reports would be factual, no? Yes?
They're still factual, but they can conflict, because you have two deputies asking two different sets of questions. Where if you had the investigator, you would have one deputy asking one set of questions and finding one set of facts. Or you could have three deputies taking statements, and if they do not read the previous reports or read some of the other statements, speak to the other deputies about what is going on with this case, they can come up with their own types of questions, and so maybe conflicting isn't the best term, but there can be three different stories for one case if you have three different deputies investigating it.
So the person that's being interviewed is giving three different stories?
No, you have three different interpretations of that story.
So how do we know the investigator will not to be difficult, but how do we know the investigator then would be the one that would have the right story if there was just one person?
Well, that's the point of being the investigator, because you would be trained to do that type of thing.
Commissioner Storley?
Thank you. Well, this is a different twist. I think it's interesting that, would there be folks out there within the state that have only that job description? That would, yeah, okay. And do you have a job description for them? Will there be one?
Yes.
Okay, okay. And in looking at the 23 types of calls that are investigated, I'm quite amazed at what's been going on in the county. It's tremendous, and I won't list them all. But it looks like that you're going to need some help. So this is something that I think would be a good position for one person to take over, and that's what you're asking.
Correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you. Actually, I have a number of questions. First of all, I would like to start with, 2 months ago in March, we approved a job description for a chief deputy sheriff / investigator, and that went up from a grade 200 to a grade 210. So now you're asking for a deputy sheriff / investigator at 190. What's the difference between those two? If we already have an investigator, why do we need a second?
Chief Deputy Investigator, that has been the job description for probably 25 years. It's been the job description since I've been here. But what the investigator does what the chief and deputy does, the chief deputy does for investigation, he does background investigations for new hires. He does internal investigations for staff who we receive complaints on. Those are the types of investigations that he does.
Okay, because I put the two job descriptions side by side, like, okay, what is this?
So the patrol deputy investigator would be investigating criminal investigations, drugs, sexual assaults, child protection, adult protection cases. Chief deputy investigator would, like I said, would be doing all the internal affairs investigations, all of the background investigations for new hires, both deputies and dispatchers.
And I'll just make the comment, because I'm more than once been kind of critical of our whole human resources job description process. And again, think the DDA, I'm concerned that we had an investigator and now we're having another investigator, and seeing the relationship between those two things is rather confusing. And then even the language that's used in the first one compared to the second one, it's like, I thought the whole process was to make sure we were more consistent across the board, and just some of the terminology and the way the structure sentences is like, really? Yeah. So I'll just register that concern again. I have another question between the chief deputy and the deputy sheriff / investigator, those two positions. The chief deputy must pass health and psych evaluations, where the deputy sheriff has to satisfactorily complete a health and psych evaluation. What's the difference between must pass, satisfactory, complete?
Well, they both must pass them according to the Minnesota Post Board.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that, but there's a discrepancy in the job description with DDA. How come DDA didn't know that? So there's another concern I have with our whole process. I'd like to get back now to the calls. And the information you had on 2023 calls here, I added up here, is 745. Do you know the prior year's numbers?
Not right this minute, but I could get that for you, yes, I could.
Well, I'm wondering, and maybe this is a question for both the sheriff and the attorney. So I went to mincourts.gov and charges filed by year. Is a charge filed the same as a case? Are we talking the same language?
Go ahead.
So, charges filed are cases that were both referred from the sheriff's office or state patrol or DNR, whoever's referring the case, to the county attorney's office and became a case in court. We review lots of referrals from the sheriff's office that we have to decline because there's not sufficient evidence, or maybe because the suspect hasn't been identified. So those cases they're not going to show up in the judicial branch's statistics.
And where do those numbers end up then? Who keeps track of that?
We are keeping track in our office, and we get the number of referrals from Zerker, which is the software that interacts between the sheriff's office and the county attorney's office. And I didn't mention that sometimes those referrals from the sheriff's office can be proven, and there's a suspect involved, and we refer them to restorative justice, or we refer them to the driving diversion program, other methods. And over the years, we've increasingly been attempting to divert cases which don't really require a court response, or where somebody should get a second chance, so that they don't end up in the court system and further burden the court system and our office with court hearings.
Yeah, so I guess I'm just maybe confused about the number of cases that require another position in the sheriff's office and how that all works, because it can be rather confusing. And so I just want to clarify, because the cover letter to this whole proposal says that it's in the budget, and yet your letter attached after the job description says you're requesting a budget increase. So I'm trying to compare what's...
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was reading this letter, and I wrote this letter before I had a chance to sit down with Brady and Administrator Yorkie. I was under the assumption it was going to be an additional position. After speaking with them last week, we have looked at what we had in the budget, and this is not an increase. It's not an additional position. So if, on that letter that you have, if you have it up right now, okay, so in the first sentence, and I'm going to send this out to you all after this meeting here, or I'll send it to Jana.
It's in the board packet, too.
It's in the board packet. So anyways, first sentence said, originally said the Cook County Sheriff's Office is requesting a budget increase to hire an investigator. Okay, that should be changed for the record to say the Cook County Sheriff's Office is requesting the approval to hire an investigator at step 190. The position was originally budgeted at step 180 due to the open position of a patrol deputy. This position will not be in addition to already existing staff and will be used mainly in the role of criminal investigator, with an option to fill shifts as a patrol deputy when needed or requested. The salary increase will not increase the 2024 budget, moving from step 180 to step 190. Then in the second paragraph that begins with until 2024, that entire paragraph should be stricken. It will be stricken in the document I send to you. And in the fourth paragraph, beginning with by hiring for the 2 current patrol staff openings, that entire paragraph should be stricken as well. I want to make that for the record, please.
Well, I appreciate that clarification, but that's the kind of stuff that I need before a meeting to make sure I
completely
understand
agree.
the process.
It was my fault, I'm sorry.
So when you're talking that right now deputies have patrol duties and that sometimes that hinders an investigation, if this new position is also doing patrol duty, how do you make sure that that doesn't happen again anyway?
That's a good question. The patrol duties will be, say in the case of a forest fire where we need extra help. Or maybe we have a deputy go out with a serious illness where they're going to be gone for a long time. That's where this person could be utilized in the patrol schedule again. Other than that, we do not plan on utilizing this person in the patrol schedule. I just wanted to get that in there to be clear that there are chances for something significant if that happens, that we could put this person back into a patrol function.
And then, because we're talking CIP plans and space needs in our county, and law enforcement is on that list of needing more room, how are you going to manage that in the office currently? If we hire another person, how are you going to manage office space?
Well, we've managed, like I said, this is not an additional position. We've had this many people in the past with the same room we have right now, so. The deputies, they can work remotely in their squad cars. If they are working remotely and out there patrolling, then they should not be in the office doing reports that much, doing phone calls or taking statements or analyzing or packaging evidence. That would be primarily the duties of the investigator. So if they're out doing what they should be doing and that person's doing what he or she should be doing, we just make it work.
Okay, that makes me think that maybe we don't need so much extra office space over there. Evidence, Sallyport, yes. I'm just trying to process all the information I'm hearing this morning. So, I would like to have seen a little more detail about needs and investigations over the years showing that we have a deficit, investigations are increasing, and exactly how it would all play out.
Thank you. Attorney Hagen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to speak up in support of Sheriff Eliason's request for an additional investigation services at his office. And from the perspective of the prosecution, it's something that we need, and we need badly. The number of times in the last 5 or 6 years that I've commented to myself or my colleagues that we really need an investigator is many. One thing that's changed since the chief deputy / investigator position was first described and created is the increased need for law enforcement to rely on digital evidence that requires search warrants to retrieve. So many times in a case, especially when we're talking the cases that most harm our most vulnerable people in this community, vulnerable adults, children, victims of domestic abuse and sexual abuse, there is evidence on cell phones. There is evidence on computers. It might be images. It could be cell phone ping data that's coming off of cell towers to show the location of people. It could be Facebook posts or Instagram posts, Snapchat interaction. Even people keep their emails on their phones and on their computers. And all of that data can become relevant and support a case that otherwise would only have the testimony of the victim to support it. And we know from our experience that jurors are not satisfied with finding somebody guilty based solely on one victim's testimony, even though in cases of sexual assault and domestic abuse, often there are only two people there, the perpetrator and the victim. So we always need to try to bolster those cases. So with every source of digital evidence, another one I didn't mention is surveillance cameras, whether they're home surveillance cameras or at a business or, along Highway 61. For every source of digital evidence, deputies, or in this case investigators, need to be drafting search warrant applications, which require some real specialized knowledge. If you were to see the templates that I see that for example, the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension uses to get Google data or Facebook data, there's a lot of stuff in there that a typical patrol deputy who's used to pulling over people for DWIs or, responding to bar fights or helping find somebody in the boundary waters, they're not going to necessarily have the information, the experience, and the language they need to have to create those search warrants. And the result can be either we don't get that evidence, which has often been the case, or that we get the evidence and then our search warrant is later challenged because it didn't have the appropriate language in it, and all the evidence gets thrown out. We can't use it at trial. I think, so in Sheriff Eliason's era as sheriff, our investigations of those serious crimes I mentioned, sexual assaults and child abuse, abuse of vulnerable adults, those investigations have increased in number. And I can't necessarily pin down the exact reason why. I have a lot of theories, but it is not a time for us to be considering reducing staff at the sheriff's office or limiting the expertise of the sheriff's of the investigations at the sheriff's office, because really what ends up happening is that victims are not served by our justice system. I know that you've commented on the number of cases that are charged in court. We have the potential to charge more cases and bring justice to more victims if we have an investigator position, because that person will have the skills necessary and the time and resources necessary so that when they're sitting down at the computer to begin to draft a search warrant to get explicit images off of a defendant's cell phone, they're not then pulled away to arrest a DWI defendant or break up a fight somewhere else. They need to have that concentrated focus and time to sit down, create these search warrants in a timely manner before those cell phones get wiped, for example. So those are some examples of why I really think that we require this position and that we can do so much more as law enforcement and as prosecution to enhance public safety here.
Thank you for those remarks. I had a question, and you've answered all my questions, so thank you. Other questions? Commissioner
Well, it's not a
Robbins.
question, but I do want to thank you for the background information and answering my questions that I have. I understand better now why I brought this forward and asked for it. I'm still concerned that I didn't get all that information. It wasn't in our board packet. That's something that I think, as a commissioner, we should be able to get that information or have it presented to us in a way that makes it clear for the public, not just for ourselves voting, but it's important to make sure those kinds of things get put out to the voters about why we're adding another position. And I think it's extremely important that we communicate. We have a strategic plan where we talk about communicating. This is an area where I see us lacking at times, not always, but at times, that we do not put the information together in a concise way that makes it easy to understand that it isn't just the same as it was 30 years ago in an investigation. Okay, because I don't know, I'm not there, so I appreciate you sharing that. But that's the kind of thing that I ask all department heads. Help me understand, put it into your packet, and when the things in the packet don't match, that gives me concern and makes me think, maybe this needs to be put off for another week and let's talk about it again. So, thank you for letting me vent there.
Other questions or comments?
Commissioner Sullivan? And to that point, it's the process. Often, information comes in, and Sheriff Elias, and Attorney Higgins, I learned a lot here today about the process. I don't know how many people, and I think I'm understanding better, but I would like to not vote on this now and do it the next, so I can think about it more. It seems to be like a thing to do, but I would like more time to really think it through. So, Sheriff, if someone is arrested for child abuse, so then that's handed to the investigator, is that arresting deputy then out of the picture, or does she still have a role to play in the investigation? Will their time still be needed for building a case, as it were?
If it's an immediate arrest for child protection, then yes, that deputy would still be needed, because they would have to write a report. They would have to give information as to what they saw, maybe at the residence, what they saw the danger was for removing that child from a residence. Yes, they will need to do that, but they will tell that to the investigator. They'll write their own report, and then the investigator would take it on from there. Okay. What typically happens in a lot of our child protection cases is we get a referral, and we work with public health on that. So the investigator would work with public health, basically building a case to present to the county attorney for a child protection matter. But if it was an immediate thing, then that deputy would be required to, yes, give some background information of their observations or what they heard or anything like that. If it was a referral, it would be given right to the investigator to work with public health.
How many referrals, or how much is coming into the office? Like 4 a week, 5 a month? I mean, it's,
Yeah.
I don't know, I have no idea how much crime of any, well, it's written down, I see that, but living my life, I'm not aware of the crime-ridden community we don't live in, except,
Expand your circles, Commissioner.
hey, you know where I'm living, right?
Exactly.
No, they come in very consistently.
Okay.
Between child protection, adult protection, maybe, sexual assault cases, and a lot of as County Attorney Hicken was talking about, a lot of these cases involve social media and digital media that take a lot of time to not only process, but to get the search warrants for, to make sure that you're freezing accounts, to make sure and you have to take the appropriate steps in the right sequence, or the evidence does you no good.
Okay.
So when you have a person who's well-versed in that, who's received the appropriate, specialized training in that type of thing, it makes the process for us and then for their office, it makes it go much quicker and much better.
So if this were a position, then that person would get the training, would have the certification for the training and then there would be ongoing updates in their training also, I'm sure, so.
Right, and I just want to reiterate again that this is not an additional position with the sheriff's office. This is an already budgeted position with the sheriff's office, just, it was set at a 190 from the personnel committee rather than a 180 from the patrol deputy positions. So the position's there, it just wasn't budgeted at a 190, it was budgeted at 180.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Storley.
Well, I just want to bring up an interesting way of looking at any of these reports, requests, whatever, that come in our packet. One of the things, usually we get them on Friday, Monday at the latest. One of the things that I find helpful is to call the person in that department, so that we come here with, this is the 3 things that I wanted to know from the sheriff's office, from IT, whatever department. Then we can say, you know, I have all my information, because sometimes we have to act as the time that this request has been coming. We can't postpone it. We have to say, I have my ducks in a row, they have their ducks in a row, and we need to move forward. So just a little happy note that it helps to call ahead to find out more details. Because it does say here that's been vacant and without approval for the job description, which has been created, that he's requesting that the investigator part now be a part of his office. That's what he's asking.
Other questions? Commissioner White.
I think that's a very, very good advice. However, when the reports are written for clarification, I'm not dissing anybody here. The more clarity, the more information, the more everything for understanding that's in a report that, or a request, because the public has access to read our agendas also, and if they open this up, and they'll have many questions also. So, and they don't get a chance to ask the questions like we can here. And it's transparency. I'm not suggesting anyone's trying to hide anything, but it's just, we all need to improve our communications. So, that's it. So thank you, Commissioner Starley.
One thing I'd like to make note of is I'm really excited that this position has come through. Obviously, being on the Personnel Committee, I was aware that this was in process, but having lived in other communities, I've seen full-time investigators before. I know the kind of training they've had. I know that once they get to court, having that critical training provides a much greater likelihood for the prosecution to be successful. And so I think this is really going to provide strength for our community, and am happy to see the request. Other questions or comments? Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm just so grateful that Sheriff Eliason is looking for ways to strengthen the department, creative ways, because we do have limited resources, we have limited staff, and we have plenty of challenges. And so I'm really grateful for this effort. If I had my way, then they would all be investigators, but we can't do everything. And I think it's a really good strategic move to have this specialization, and I really applaud you working with Attorney's Office and Human Services to try to see what the needs are, what's going to make the most sense, and how can we better leverage the resources we have. So it's really good that we've had this conversation and got more details and a better understanding of how things work for all of us here, and just hearing from deputies too, just knowing a number of the burdens, and everyone's strapped, right, for both time and patrol and doing the investigation. So if we can hone this in, I think it's a really good thing. Probably should have done it sooner, huh? It's always 20/20 hindsight.
Commissioner White.
I'd like to address your statement, Commissioner Johnson, where you said, when Sheriff Eliason said, we'll make do, like you questioned, where are you going to put this other person? That's not a negative thing in one respect. We've been in there, and it's like they are all in little shoeboxes piled high on the side, with information or evidence on the side, stacked, whatever they have there. But I don't think at this, I believe that law enforcement needs to have a better, more efficient working space. However, I appreciate the fact that they will persevere and continue to do a good job in spite of the limitations that we put on them. So it's not a really negative thing, but it is, going forward, it would be better. But at this point, it's not going to be, unless, it's not going to be, well, unless we get more space, we just can't help you guys anymore. We're just out, sorry, need more, so I appreciate that. And so they're probably whining about it as they bump elbows, but that's not my problem at the moment. I don't work there. So, anyway, thank you.
Deputies don't whine.
They don't? So anyway, I just had to. I got you to speak.
I had a list of questions, sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner Johnson.
I want to address Commissioner Storley's comment earlier. Part of why I brought this up, and no, I didn't reach out to Pat, but I have copies of emails that I've talked to Pat about the same issue, similar issues, so I have that information. But our board packet is part of the public record. And as a person who likes to look up things online and go back and, 3 years ago, what was that? How was it said? I absolutely, I'm not supposed to use the word frustrated, but anyway, it bothers me when things in the board packet do not match. And the letter that was included in our board packet, which is different from the letter that Sheriff Eliason read this morning to us, that concerns me. That's why I would like to make a motion that we postpone this, we delay it until our next regular board meeting, that we can make sure the public record and the information that we are voting on matches. And I'd also like you to double check on, is it required to pass psych evaluations or satisfactorily? Because I think the two things should match in the job descriptions. So I will make a motion to delay this until our next regular meeting.
All right, so we have a motion to delay till our meeting at the end of May. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Commissioner Mills.
I really don't think it's going to serve our community more, because the minutes is really what we're looking at. We're not looking at agendas, and I think Sheriff Eliason made it quite clear that he wanted to amend that letter and change that. So I don't know that waiting is going to serve our community as much as getting this position out there and really trying to fill it. I think that's a much more important need at the time. I do agree 100% on clarity and consistency. It's just, nothing's perfect.
Any other comments or questions? So we have a motion to
Excuse
postpone
me,
this.
Commissioner Sullivan, to your statement, nothing's perfect. We don't need to strive for mediocrity at all. So if we have an opportunity to create a more accurate, I mean, it's just a letter, but there are people indeed who actually look at past agendas, and in the minutes they reflect yes, no's, that type of thing, but actually the discussions have value. And what Sheriff Eliason told us about, and Attorney Hagen told us about, this digital requirements and the search warrants has great value. And the only way I think we actually see that these days is if you go to YouTube, and it's not in the minutes. And the discussion today here, I think, was really valuable. I don't know how that ever gets in print anywhere, but it was really, really good to have all this here, to hear about that. I think many people are educated. If you're listening out there, it's not easy. It's easy on the cop shows, but it's not so easy in real life. So that's all. That's all.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion fails. Is there another motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the job description and job grade for the deputy sheriff / investigator with a job grade of 190.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support? I'll support. Any further discussion?
Just for clarification, what is delaying going to help?
It's the, go ahead.
I'm looking for all answers, yeah.
the cover letter and the letter that is included in our board packet are going to match. And I hope we double check on if you must pass the poster with the whatever, or what the qualifications for the job are that I think varying wording was used.
Commissioner White?
Well, I'm not in opposition to the position per se, but I just feel like, is there harm in delaying it to our next board meeting to approve it? Because, I don't know. It just seems like we could, if we can do better with communications, we should do better with communications.
I think we'll have a letter that can be included with our minutes. And I think that'll clarify things for the public. And I feel like time is of the essence. I feel like we're behind already. So, other discussion?
No.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take a short break at this point.
I have a quick, can I just add something on since I'm up here?
All right.
Just for informational purposes. So in our employee handbook, when we hire temporary seasonal staff, they don't go through the formal recruitment selection and board approval process, but the handbook states that we at least acknowledge in front of the board who we've hired on and who has started. And we have quite a list right now that I just wanted to provide you for informational purposes. Some of them you've seen with their welcome bios that we send out via email, but I just wanted to provide you for that information here. So with the Highway Department, we welcomed back, and apologies if I don't say his last name right, Dan Anselo. He's one of our seasonal maintenance workers, started at the end of April. And then today we welcome Cody DeWandeler as our second seasonal maintenance worker, and Abigail Prom as our seasonal environmental worker. And then next Monday, we'll welcome back our Soil Water Conservation District watercraft inspectors. We welcome back Wiley Thompson, Leroy Johnson, Steve Fernlin, and Boyd Blomberg.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take a short break at this time. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone, to the Cook County Board of Commissioners regular meeting. Today, May 14th. So we are on item 10, and we'll turn things over to Auditor Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First item is the parking lot service contract at Sag Landing. This could be on consent agenda. The reason I bring it up here is there's been a lot of discussion with the Parks and Trails Department, with the Forest Service. The county has 2 lots we service up there. Parking lot 1 is the parcel we own, and parking lot 2 is owned by the Forest Service. We run it by permit. It's kind of an overflow for parking in the 2 lots, and the Forest Service indicated they're not going to renew that permit, so it just runs through the end of this year. So this would be the last time you'll see a contract like this. I don't know what the future is, for next year. They're going to talk about it. I think Dave knows more about that, being on the Parks and Trails, but they're looking at the future and what the Forest Service desires to do up there. But anyway, this is the same contract you saw last year. There was a smaller increase last year, $350. Hadn't changed in many years, so no change in that or in any of the processes. With that increased dollar amount, they're doing more of the work up there to relieve some of us the mowing and the brushing and some of that they, our staff used to do, so.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Mills, any comments you wanted to make based on discussions at Parks and Trails?
The landings are discussed often and just how we can better manage those. And considering our limited resources with staffing, we're trying to, we suggest working with other entities that are already managing things up there. And so I'm just pretty happy that this is moving forward. There's still going to be more talk, I think, around the Clearwater landing at some point, or just seeing what happens there. And like Brady said, the future of beyond this agreement. But all in all, it sounds like some really great progress, and by and large, the complaints that have been brought forward regarding latrines and that sort of thing are being addressed by the Forest Service, and just really, really good work. So I guess nothing of substance there.
All right, just wanted
Lots of words.
Just wanted to double check. All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. Is there a motion to approve the agreement with Voyager Canoe Outfitters to provide the parking lot services at Sag Lake parking lots 1 and 2 for this year?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Sterling. We have a motion and support. Anything further? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Second item is asking to increase the total limit for county credit cards, and at the same time, then increase the limits on 2 of the cards to Human Services from $7,000 to $10,000. So most of the county departments have 1 or more credit cards with varying limits depending on their usage. There are actually several of them that have 10,000 limit right now. The IT department, LEC, highway, emergency management, and maintenance. It's mostly, this comes about when they hit the limit sometime during the month, and then the card doesn't work, and we get calls, et cetera. So if it happens more than once, you go, okay, let's increase the limit on that one so that we don't get those calls. We don't have all that. So they think they haven't hit that limit, but they expect to at Public Health Human Services. And Plowman and Allison just explained they've just had a significant increase in staffing and grant awards, and the number of those grants and amounts. They have to upfront the costs. So it can be staff travel outside of the county and supplies and whatever is part of that grant. So they're upfronting that cost during the month, and then they figure they're gonna hit those limits or come really close. And rather than get the stop on the cards as someone's traveling, et cetera, better to avoid that, so.
All right, thank you for that explanation.
And we wouldn't up any of the other limits on the cards, so this would just give us, on these cards, it would get us to maybe 180,000 of the 250 of our overall limit right now. I haven't totaled them all exact, but it's very close to that. And it would just give us some room if, with new staff, new cards, and inflation, et cetera, when someone starts hitting the limit, so.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. Well, I know with the commissioner credit cards, we use it for our travel. Does public health purchase things with it, or are they using this also for travel?
They use it for travel, but they purchase supplies. Sometimes it's hard, where you want to get a supply. I see that happening all the time. That's the proliferation of cards, because it's hard to set up accounts with all of these entities that you're forced to go to buy things now. And so the card is the best option, rather than going through some laborious process to set up an account for somebody. You might buy a few items under a particular grant, you may never use them again, so to speak, that kind of thing.
Good question. Other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve increase for the total limit on our county credit cards to 250,000 and increase the limit for individual apartment PHHS there to 10,000.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The next issue, Madam Chair, is a request for subordination of a revolving loan. This is Sandy McWaters. Her loan is for Terabella, the flower shop. It's just east of town. Her son would like to build a house on that same piece of land, and she would like to have that happen. And for the bank to approve that loan and mortgage, they require that our loans be behind them. So that would put us in second place behind this new mortgage, as well as Sandy's Terabella mortgages. We didn't delve too hard into the question of, could you subdivide this property and separate our mortgage from the other mortgage? She did indicate that the difficulties in doing that, the time involved, working with the city council, et cetera, and she asked, not to have to move that direction. So the Revolving Loan Fund Committee spent some time on this. We met on May 8th to discuss the requests and did some detailed work on the son's ability to pay that mortgage and on Sandy's ability to continue paying on her mortgage. And we concluded that we were satisfied that both of them were fully capable, current conditions, of paying those mortgages. And the appraisal on this property with the new building is such that all of the loans would be at about 65% of that appraised value, which is, that's a lot of room, more than we usually get with any mortgage that we have in second or third place. Usually it's at the 80% mark or something like that. So this is your decision. If you feel comfortable, committee feels comfortable with providing that subordination.
Well, one thing it certainly does is add more housing.
Yeah, that was something mentioned at the committee too, that it does provide one more house in Cook County where there is such a shortage, so.
And expands the tax base. I sound like the EDA. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Also move that we approve the RF loan to Terabella.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Is there support?
Support?
All right, we have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So, Madam Chair, the next item is the bid for Pincushion Mountain Trail rehab work. This is Phase 1. So, the request is to approve the low bid of $127,000 by Dirt Candy Designs LLC to complete that Phase 1 rehabilitation. So you've heard of this before. In September and October of '22, the county solicited bids for the rehab of about 3.75 acres of the single track and then making a quarter mile of new single track. We received one bid, Dirt Candy Designs LLC. The reason this delayed so long is the securing of the funds. We could have come forward to approve it, but want to make sure that they had all the funding. There's a grant, a federal recreation trail program grant of $75,000, $25,000. It says Superior Cycling Association funding. Well, they went to EDA, and EDA got an IRRB grant of $25,000 to cover that portion of it, and then they came back to us, so you heard about this again, for $27,000 from our recreation fund. So all of that adds up to the $127,000, which is the bid amount. And very shortly, you will see the agreements coming forth on this from county attorney. So this is the first step in that to approve that bid.
Thank you very much for the thorough explanation. Any questions or comments? Is there a motion?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the low bid of $127,000 by Dirt Candy Designs to complete the Phase 1 rehab of Pincushion.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
I'll support that.
Thank you, Commissioner White. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion or comments? Questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So the next item is to approve the bid for Phase 2 of the Pincushion Mountain Trails. So again, we received one bid from Dirt Candy Designs LLC. Not surprising, given that these are not huge jobs and that they were the ones that built the original trails here and live here. So bids were solicited for this one more recently in March 2024. This is for rehab of about the other 4.5 miles of the single track at Pincushion Mountains, the Rock and Hard Place, Fluvial, Back 80, Canadian Shield, etc. So in this case, instead of a single number, the Superior Cycling Association, the bid invitation included a different method. They asked for the dollar amount per day and et cetera, rather than a straight hard bid, because they said this is the way people are bidding these trails all across the nation. You get better work this way than they find than saying, making somebody bid a particular dollar amount without knowing exactly what they're going to run into. So they're going to monitor it closely. This is just for the work itself, so SCA is going to supply the supplies for this, bridges, et cetera, and then this will just be for the hourly work, and they're going to be monitoring it, and you'll see that all in the specific agreements with SCA and Dirt Candy coming up with the county attorney. So the funding on this is, we haven't signed this agreement yet, but it's through Environmental and Natural Resources Trust Fund, and this is LCCMR. You'll also see that language because they manage the Environmental Trust funds. So that's where it'll actually be coming from. And that's for $200,000, which the club and the bidder feel will cover all of its costs. So.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have questions for Auditor Powers on Phase 2? Commissioner?
So just to clarify with the bidding process, you're saying what they found is that when it comes to some of the trail constructions, rather than having a bid for the overall project and maybe giving the overall project 80% of what it needs, if things just don't work out or they run into something, this is like, we'll bid this rate, address the project as far as we can, and hopefully all the funds will cover it. Is that?
Yeah, I think the fact that they're managing and overseeing the project gives them some comfort in it, that they'll get the work. And I don't know if they'll run into a limit with this. It is a little bit bigger than the other project. I mentioned the names for bike riders, Canadian Shield, Back 80. They're tougher sections, I think, to work on, so it probably is more expensive. $200,000 for this, $127,000 for the other. So I expect that, if they run into some difficulty, they're going to get the work the way they want it done, and then they may reach a point where they say, I got to stop now because I can't do anymore with this kind of funding, and then they'll have to make a decision rather than you put somebody to work and they bid 150 and you see what you get.
Right.
That's what apparently that's what they see in other places. So.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Hawkins?
Yeah, can I just ask a clarifying question? So in this one, we didn't have any grant information of that 200,000 that you just talked about.
Because we haven't signed it yet, but I have
But we
it
have
in front of me.
okay,
So they're still
have it.
waiting to see our actual agreements with SCA. They want to know that we have that kind of oversight.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
it's not reimbursing like 6 months later, we'll get it, or?
No,
Okay, we
it
got
won't happen until we get the grant.
Until we get, all right, just wanted to clarify that, thank you.
Other questions? No, good question. All right, is there a motion?
So moved, Madam Chair.
All right, do we have support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion and support. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Attorney Hicken.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. So, on the same topic, I have submitted for the board an agreement for Phase 1 of the Pincushion Rehabilitation Project. The draft that I submitted with the board packet was a preliminary draft, and I have prepared a final draft and shared that this morning. The substance of the agreement is the same. What I added is the grant agreements that became available after the board agenda packet was due. There are two agreements here for you to review. The first is an agreement with Dirt Candy Designs LLC. They're the contractor that you just awarded bids for Phase 1 on. This agreement establishes all of the statutory requirements that municipalities are supposed to include in their contracts. For example, performance and payment bonds and insurance coverage and non-discrimination clauses and all of that. It also includes and incorporates all of the provisions that we signed on to through the FRTP grant contract. So we're transferring a lot of those obligations to the contractor since they're in charge of the build. And also the conditions of the IRRR contract, which is actually not ours, that is the EDA's contract, but it's partially funding this project. And we are the ones with the legal relationship with the contractor for the project. The second agreement in your packet is the proposed cooperative agreement with Superior Cycling Association. So in this agreement, the county is agreeing to be the fiscal agent for the grant that covers Phase 2. So the cooperative agreement covers both Phase 1 and Phase 2. We're agreeing to be the fiscal agent for that LCCMR agreement, grant that Brady mentioned. And we're agreeing to have the legal relationship with the contractor, pay the contractor from the grant funds. And SCA, in exchange, is agreeing to assist us in supervising progress on the project. Since SCA, they're a member of the International Mountain Bike Association, single-purpose, single-track mountain bike trail. They can be out there on the ground. They are not responsible for enforcing all the provisions of the contract. What we're asking them to do is to report back to us if they see inconsistencies with how the contractor has promised to build the trail. If they see problems with the quality or the materials being used, if they observe anything that looks like it could be a violation of the standards that the Forest Service set up, which are also included in the contracts, and to report on the progress. Is progress going forward in the time period that we intended it to go forward in? These contracts, like I said, were not in the final version when they were published with the board packet. We will publish the digital version with the electronic board packet, and I've printed a couple copies here, one for the public and one for the dais here. The reason they came to you without being finalized is because the timeline is pretty short. We know that Dirt Candy and SCA would like to get building these trails mid-May. If you read carefully, you saw that in at least one of the grant agreements, they promised to, or we are promising to start on the trail construction by May 31st. So technically, we could put this off until the May 28th business meeting if that was your request. I do intend to have the Phase 2 agreements in front of you for May 28th. Another agreement that actually relates back to Phase 1, I drafted yesterday. That's a funding agreement with the EDA. So because the EDA is the grantee of the IRRR funds, but we're paying the contract, we had to have an agreement in place that says, here's how the county's going to ensure that the EDA's grant funds go towards the contract. So we don't become responsible for that out of county funds. So the funding for Phase 1 is $75,000 FRTP grant with a $25,000 match coming from IRRR. The IRRR grant requires at least a $25,000 match to their $25,000, and that's where that 27 from the county's recreational trail funds comes into the equation. And then, like Brady said, LCCMR is the funding source for Phase 2. So, and we just got that agreement yesterday, so I wanted to incorporate both phases into the draft you had today, but that was just too many changes.
Well, it seems reasonable. We have a couple of items that we can take action on today, and then we'll come back at the end of May to deal with those two others.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is really exciting. This is one of the areas that I see a lot of potential for with the Parks and Trails Department, because we've had a lot of action, and good on SCA for going after it. And I'd like to see more and different trails built in the county to really bolster our recreation opportunities, outdoor rec opportunities, and I'm just really excited for this sort of thing happening on a broader scale. But that being said, all of these projects clearly take so much coordination and intergovernmental relationships and contracts that it really stresses, I think, the point of that Parks and Trails coordinator or maybe someday director. And just some of the complexities there clearly need the attorney's office as well as our auditor's office. So lots more work to be done, but I think these are pretty great for the continuation of this section of trail.
Other questions or comments? Would you like a motion on each item separately, Attorney Hagen?
I think so.
That's the way I was thinking. All right. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the agreement with Dirt Candy Designs LLC for trail builder work for the Pincushion Mountain Bike Trail Rehab Project.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner White. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So we have item 2, the Cooperative Project Management.
Madam Chair, I'd
Services.
like to make a motion to approve the cooperative project management services agreement with the Spear Recycling Association for Pincushion Mountain Bike Trail Rehab.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion and support. Any other questions or comments? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much, Attorney Hagen. Administrator Yorkie.
Right.
You've already taken care of item A.
Indeed. So we'll move right on to capital improvement plan update. A lot to talk about here. I have been reaching out to roofing companies. We've got a couple of roofing projects that are scheduled for this year. And those are the community center and also the Colville Town Hall. I should add to that, recently in the windstorm that we had now about 2-3 weeks ago, shingles blew off the museum and we had some water damage there. That roof is a shake shingle roof. It was put on 20 years ago. When the shingles blew off, there was water that got in, and when we went up to do the repair, which has been done, and it's now, we've had one heavy rain event where there's been no leaking, so that appears to be fixed. But those shakes are in really bad shape. And so we're looking at getting bids on that building as well. I've called a couple of companies in Duluth. Actually, I've called 4 companies, 2 of which only do commercial membrane flat roof type applications, so they would not be interested in this kind of work. These are more akin to residential roofs, pitched composition shingle. So there is one company out of Duluth that has looked at the 3 buildings and is going to be providing a bid. We've also, per the board's request, have reached out to local roofers. I have 3 local roofers that are interested in the work, have visited with one of them and gone to the buildings, and they are providing a bid on both the Colville Town Hall and the community center. The other thing about the museum is that it's a very pitched roof. It's a 2-story building, not the easiest one to re-roof. And so our local bidder is not interested in that project. But I'm pretty comfortable. The other big news on talking to the roofing companies is that they would be able to do the work this summer, in fact, starting as early as next month. So that puts us in a good position to actually get these projects done this year. And that is really at the top of the priority list. So really encouraged by that. I'm continuing to work on RFPs for the other components of the deferred maintenance list. That process has been slower than I had hoped for. Ordinarily, in most organizations, you would have a facilities department that would handle that kind of stuff. We don't really have that capacity, and so I'm trying to pinch hit on that. And so that is still pending, but I will have more information on that, I hope soon. Wanted to talk about recent visit that we paid to a local commercial property that's on the market. We are looking for near-term office space solutions. We are overcrowded here in the courthouse, and we also, as I think everybody knows, we are looking at trying to address safety and security concerns in the courtroom and adjacent offices. And so we've been looking at different ways since the board recently decided to put the Judicial Center project on hold, have been looking for other opportunities to provide office space in the near term while we come up with a longer term solution. As part of that, we recently visited a commercial property that's been on the market for some time here in Grand Marais. Commissioners White and Johnson joined us on that visit, as did MIS Director Rowan Watkins and PHHS Director Allison McIntyre. We went through the building, looked at all of the space in terms of square footage. It's something that I think could provide a short-term solution. It's got adequate room. The building itself would require a lot of modification, and it's got a second story that has sloped roofs that really would be, I think, kind of tricky to use. It probably would be more suited for storage than office spaces. So as we toured the building and started looking at some of the, not only the reconstruction that would have to occur there, also deferred maintenance. There's a lot of, it's a roughly 30-year-old building. Looking at the exterior, there are a lot of building envelope improvements that would need to be made. And so we had a meeting Friday last week to debrief on the visit. So Commissioners Johnson and White, again, were part of that discussion, as were Rowan and Allison. And we really talked about the possibilities of it, but I think a couple of things really discouraged us from recommending that we pursue that option. One being the amount of investment that we would have to put into the building to make it suitable for our use. That would be significant, well above and probably beyond the purchase price by possibly a factor of 3. It'd take a lot of money to put into the building to make it usable. And there's a lot of, again, just deferred maintenance type stuff that would have to be done. Windows would have to be replaced, probably add insulation, that kind of stuff. A lot of work that would leave us with a building that is still roughly 30 years old and would require a lot of upkeep. There are also expenses that would be related to getting internet connected there, which is a significant challenge. And so the more that we talked about that option, the less keen we were on recommending that we pursue that as a short-term possibility. And so I guess I should pause there. We've got Rowan here in the meeting room, and also the two commissioners who were part of that visit and discussion. And I would invite the three of them to add anything that I might have missed.
Rowan, would you like to come up to the microphone just so the public can hear you? Thank you.
Commissioner White. For me, the biggest thing is what Rowan's going to report on, is about the internet, and it's not just having Arrowhead lay fiber. It's more involved in that, and he can, of course, much better explain. But that issue, I felt, was a real deciding factor for me, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. I'd be happy to talk a little bit about that. Something that we being the MIS department have put a lot of work into over the years, and predating my time here, is creating what's called a local WAN, or a wide area network. And essentially what we have in place here that really provides us a significant level of redundancy and reducing downtime when there are things like fiber cuts is a loop on fiber, of dedicated fiber that it's our own. So we're not dependent on internet service providers, and then in addition to that, we have a at these three buildings here locally in the county between the community center, the courthouse, and the law enforcement center, we have this loop of fiber and then redundant routers and firewall gateways that if we have a break somewhere, it automatically fails over and rolls around. And so to replicate that at another building, you'd be looking at a significant expense, not just running one stretch of dark fiber out to this building, but then on a redundant path back to a separate building. So it would get pretty expensive. And why that's important, or where we see value in that, a good example is with the Fifth Avenue project here. More than once, we had fiber dug up. And had we not had that system in place, the courthouse and other buildings would have been completely without internet access to their files and systems that we need to run day-to-day operations. And so, because we had that in place, it was seamless, and we could be a little bit more patient and waiting to get that fiber spliced. And because one of the departments that are being considered for moving over to this outlying building here would be PHHS. They're pretty high. They rank up there in the critical services. And so my suggestion or my recommendation would be, if possible, to keep them inside that ring, or at least have them retain the same amount of ability, that redundancy and reliability that we've talked about in the past.
Commissioner Johnson.
Can I ask a question? Because after our discussion Friday, I was thinking more about what you shared with us, and it made sense. Do you remember when that line got put in for redundancy? What year that was?
Kevin was still here and Rena was here. So
was new,
we're,
right?
yeah, 2015, 2016, somewhere in there.
I meant to go back and look that up. Because, do you remember how much it cost? Because I remember that discussion when that all came. Rena really stressed our need for that, and it was quite expensive back then, I thought.
Yeah.
But I don't remember.
I don't. I
Okay.
apologize. I didn't have that
I didn't have
number
time to
prepared.
look that up this weekend, so.
But it is, in addition to what that would cost, because it's our fiber and we lease it, it's dedicated, there's ongoing costs. And so, you would not only pay to have that fiber initially installed, which would be significant, it would add to recurring costs for as long as we were utilizing that building and that fiber. And so we pay monthly for our WAN services.
Yeah, so that was interesting information, and in the age of cybersecurity and everything else we hear about in government work, I was like, oh, I was glad Rowan had shared that with us during the discussions. That was another factor that we hadn't put on our list of things to consider, so thank you for your input on that.
Absolutely.
Other insights that you had during the visit?
Big open spaces, but no, I felt like we as a board, we still need to sit down and discuss what are all the options we could do. I mean, we should just discuss what are the options, what are the, add on to the courthouse, go this way, go that way. I don't know, have everybody work from home every other week? Just thinking outside the box, what are some of the options? But number one is, the driving force for additional space is our ever-expanding Public Health and Human Services Department. And now that we really, I believe, need to have a discussion, a solid discussion and investigation into why do we have so many people? It's because what they do requires an awful lot of time and paperwork, and we have a county that is very needy, that we have a lot of mental illness, we have a lot of social needs that our department, but what is it? But unfortunately, now that I'm focusing on this, I have been having disgruntled people that are frustrated in the community who haven't had the best experiences with that department. I understand all the confidentiality and everything like that, but do all counties have the same number of, proportionately, of public health and human service employees for a population our size? We have 37, you said 37 people in public health and human services for a population of 5,600 people. So Lake County has 2.5, 3 times the number of people. So do they have like 100 people in their department? I'm just curious as to why that department is so large. Is there redundancy in an overlap of what they do? I don't believe that we have the answers here. So, but these are questions I believe that we need to, before we go forward to do anything else besides fixing the roofs, is really find out the space. The employees have been asked what would they like. Yeah, well, someone asked me as a homeowner what I would like. I'd like in-floor heat. Never going to happen, you know. So you work with, like Sheriff Eliason said, they can make do. Making do is not optimal. And so I just want to know truly what, if you look at the chart that Allison McIntyre has submitted for us to look at, the departments, the breakout of who does what. What are those things they do? How many people are being serviced by each case manager? How, I mean, this would be a data-heavy thing. And I believe, as I said last time, we have never had a sit-down because of open meeting laws to truly discuss what would be the options be for gathering more, or for attaining more space for this
Madam Chair,
county.
that's what this agenda item is.
Yep.
That's why we're having this discussion.
Okay, then when do we get the numbers? This is what I'm requesting. I would like to sit down and let's all look at the numbers for public health and human services. And for all the departments, we know that EMS, he's stuck in a little corner back, you know, his little head sticks up and he's surrounded by piles of things, but we need to do that. What do we think about adding onto the courthouse as an option?
So I think it's something that, you know, we have explored. And when we first had
I was here when you were-
CRBPS come.
I was actually going to cover that topic next.
All right, so if you'd like to go ahead.
So we were shown the capital improvement plan, deferred maintenance, all these things, and then there were 3 pictures of options for getting more room. Do we have it? What meeting do I go back and look at where we discussed which option to go with? And why did we choose a second floor? Why did we choose that over the, what numbers did we have to decide that would be the best use of, to go forward? Do you have a recollection when we did that?
I don't have a recollection on numbers, but I know one of the things that was really important, beyond just numbers of staff and being crowded, were the safety and security needs that we had on the courthouse. And we had multiple tours, some with just CRBPS. We had tours with Judge Kuzo. We had a number of different situations where we gathered that information. Were there other things you wanted to mention?
Well, again, I wanted to kind of wrap up discussion on the visit that we did recently and kind of like get agreement that that's not something that we want to pursue. That's what I took away from our meeting on Friday.
Okay.
So, at the last meeting, I was asked to get in contact with BKV, which did the work for us on the judicial center planning, to look at options 2 and 3 in the CIP, which proposed putting additions on the north side of the courthouse. One of those was a 1-story addition on the second level that would basically be built over the hillside. The second option, or I don't remember the order, but the other option was a 2-story addition that would kind of be built into the hillside. That would probably require some blasting. And that would be to address the shortage of office space that we have in this building. I did reach out to BKV. They have provided a proposal for following up on that to provide that analysis. Again, if we are not pursuing a judicial center, there are safety and security issues that need to be addressed in this building. I think putting an addition on this building would provide an opportunity for us to maybe do some things that currently we can't do with the building in its current configuration. There are also other things that we could explore in terms of adding on to other county facilities. And one of those is the community center, which is about 30 years old. It was built largely with volunteer labor. The condition of the building, and this is not at all to disparage the efforts of those who made the contribution to actually get that building up. I think it's a wonderful story of how this community works together to get things done. But that building was not designed to be a 50 or 70-year building. It was basically, I mean, I don't know that there was a spec for it, but it looks to be about a 30-year building, and it's at the end of that lifespan. And there are a number of issues. I mean, if you look at the CIP, there are a number of deferred maintenance needs on that building. We talked about the roof already. That building is heavily used, and it's something that, I mean, and not just like 5 days a week, but like every day of the week. You can drive by there on a Sunday and there are cars parked out front. People are using it for special events, for public events, all kinds of things. And so, you know, that building is on the fiber loop that Rowan was describing. And so, knowing that there are certain needs that that building has, the big meeting room off the curling arena is heavily used. And we have lots of meetings there, but the acoustics are really bad because it's not separated from the entrance. So when you're trying to have a meeting there and there are people coming in and out, it's very disruptive. And I'm sure you've all experienced that. And so there are certain, you know, operational deficiencies that need to be addressed there. And the fact is that building is not something that was designed to be durable, to be a long-term building. And so one potential opportunity would be to look at, and we actually, when we were putting the CIP together, we were talking about the space needs at the sheriff's office and here in the courthouse. We contemplated putting some kind of renovation of the community center into the CIP. And the reason we didn't do that is because the capital that it would take to do all of those projects, we believe would be too great a burden to put on the community. So that doesn't say that those needs aren't significant at the community center. It's just that was the choice that we made at that time. We recognize that there are, you know, in the next iteration of the CIP that we probably would incorporate the community center into it. And so now, if we are not moving forward on the judicial center, there are a couple of questions. What is the board's feeling about considering an addition onto the courthouse per options 1 or 2 and 3 in the CIP? What is the appetite for possibly looking at the community center as a site for renovation of that space and the addition of office spaces? And then the next question is, you know, the judicial center and the additions to the LEC were basically, I mean, there were parts of a whole, but the LEC addition is on the north side of the building. That's all sheriff's space. The judicial center was proposed to be on the south side of the building, and that's all court-related functions. And so part of my question to the board today is, since we are pausing the judicial center, what of the plan to add space onto the LEC? And then what is our longer-term plan for providing office space for departments that currently are short of it, and for staff who just don't have offices? So those are the kind of the big questions that Commissioner White, I think you're wanting to explore, and this is the opportunity for us.
I'm smiling, yes.
This is the opportunity to have that conversation. And again, as the agenda cover sheet indicates, I'm not requesting any action from the board today. I did get that proposal from BKV. If there were an appetite for pursuing that, you could recommend that we move forward on that. I'm not asking for that today. just putting it out there for information. But what I'm really wanting is for board feedback on what we should do at this point. At this point, now that we have paused the judicial center project and we still have needs.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, I think we need to, again, I think you were impressed with their work before. And we should reach out to them again. But I was a little concerned with the language that was put in here in this proposal, that we were saying, okay, now only look at the courthouse. I think we should say.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah. My opinion is, hey, these are where our fiber optic is. These are our buildings. Where do you think makes the most sense to put some space? And whether it's PHHS or it's land services or who knows? Brady, maybe you'll get a new office. I don't know, but they're architects that do this for a living, and I think they're the best ones to judge what kind of building will fit in the spaces that we have. So I think we should reach out to them and explore what else. Yeah, we did that before with CRBPS, and they gave us 2 proposals that, it turns out their proposals were so far off when we got to the judicial center that I kind of would like to start with this other company and say, okay, just give us your best, most, in your opinion, where the best site might be for us to consider. That being said, I do think we know we have needs at the law enforcement center that should be addressed. We need to fix the Sally Port. We need to have evidence process it. So I think we should also just go ahead with that. Now, whether or not it's a 2-story with, space up above, I don't know. I guess I'm kind of wishy-washy on that one, but thinking like the GES, where maybe build the 2nd story but don't finish it yet. I don't know. Look at options like that. What is it really going to cost to do that? So that's my opinion.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? I am really impressed with the work BKV has done and would like to potentially expand their view to the community center, given the space needs that we have and the safety and security needs, and get a proposal for that space.
I'll just jump right in. Absolutely, I believe that having had the opportunity to listen to Henry work. Henry was the architect that was here, and we had our department heads here, and he listened. When people were giving him, he listened. He's a good communicator, more or less, and primarily does a lot of ums. But other than that, he really listened and took that information, would put it on the blueprint, and then ask for input from those that would be using this space. So he was most impressive. I would trust him to come in and look at this courthouse, to look at our the community center. That idea had come up. I was very good at not mentioning that, don't you think? But anyway, doing something with that building, with whatever, but these are the people that do this for a living, and they would come up with more accurate estimates, which, as we all know, will be a moment in time, and by the time we get them, they'll be higher. But I would like to have all of those numbers to look at, and they would be the people. Community center, courthouse, the interior, additions or no additions, I don't know. But let them make those decisions.
Commissioner Mills.
So kind of what I'm hearing, and I don't disagree, is that we're thinking BKV might be a good consultant to take another look at our comprehensive capital needs and to try to, take another stab at what's going to make the most sense for our whole organization. Is that?
Right, because they were tasked with
just one. Yep.
And now that let's look at other options with your input and and experience.
Yeah, I can agree. I think there's a lot of value there. And I do want to, regardless, I think we need to address the law enforcement center needs.
Yes.
It's just hard for me to, we're doing that until we have that more comprehensive, because maybe BKV is going to come back and be like, well, turns out this is what we think you should do, and too bad you already started on that Sally Port because we're going to redo it, or whatever, I don't know how long it would take them to develop that larger, I don't have a good concept there, so if that delays things too long, I don't like that either, but if it gives us a better comprehensive view, I think that could be very valuable.
Commissioner Sullivan, Commissioner Mills, sitting in on that was when they designed the Justice Center and for the law enforcement, it could be a two-phase project. There was a lot of thought for security and access in and out of that additional space. And they were also talking about reconfiguring, moving some interior walls in law enforcement. The sheriff loses his space and has to go down the hall somewhere. I'm not that familiar with it. But that all was designed as a standalone project. So they would not have to revisit that.
Right. That's my understanding as well. And from the standpoint of emergency management, I think it makes so much sense for the Director of Emergency Management to be with law enforcement. That's where we find those people in a number of places. So I really would agree with you that BKV did a great job with the LEC, and an opportunity to have them work now with the community center and our facilities here seems reasonable. And I am very impressed with how reasonable their costs have been. I will just say that up front. I thought they would come in much higher, and so I like that aspect.
And one thing about them, they have a lot of experience with courthouses. They were talking about courthouses in different states that they have worked on.
Yeah.
So.
Madam Chair, and just to clarify then, you're saying that if we do just the first phase of the law enforcement center, that there wouldn't be a risk of BKV coming back and saying, turns out the judicial center is what we, or the justice center is what we still, what's still, or that vision does make the most sense after all. We wouldn't be at any risk of redoing it because we had that phased approach already. Is that what you're?
Right.
Yeah.
For the law enforcement center it's a standalone phase.
Yeah, aside from the judicial, yeah.
Commissioner Storley,
I'm
your
listening.
thoughts?
I agree. I can't put anything else out there except we're juggling. Let's just keep the balls up, don't let it drop. So, moving forward with what I agree with Commissioner White and Johnson and everybody.
Commissioner.
I mean, it sounds like we're largely in agreement here. Do we want to, take the next step here? I know Administrator Yorkey's not asking for anything here, but I mean, do we want to make moves in that direction to getting things fleshed out a little bit more? And
To be clear, I am asking for next steps. I'm not asking for an action.
their proposal.
But a
Yeah.
direction to
Yeah.
follow.
Right. Yeah.
Because, I'm sensing that we want to explore other options. And so I'm just wondering, what options are we talking about specifically? We've got the thing that's in the board packet from BKV. That does not include any contemplation of changing the community center, and so is that something that needs to be added? And then, if we look at those options, to your point, Commissioner Mills, how does that interplay with work that we've already done, and how does that inform a prioritization process about where to make the best investment?
Yeah, and kind of what I was interpreting, and please correct me if I'm misinterpreting, Commissioner White, is just that given the reins to BKV and look at all this, what do you think of the overall, and how do we Like, I mean, not just giving them the,
I
but,
understand.
yeah.
But
Give them a little slack to, yeah.
But how can we make a decision without knowing everything?
Right.
And we're gonna make the decision once. Once.
And you can't know everything.
Well, and we don't know the numbers for any of these different, and that's how we can make the most informed decision at this point in time. Life always changes, but that would be the situation. And indeed, Administrator Yorkie, the community center, I feel like I have I'm ahead of the game because I got to sit in on those 5 meetings and heard Henry and his process. I got to tour and we had conversations about, Rowan was there and Allison was there, talking about the community center and options there. So I've had a lot of time to think about these things. It's not, so.
Great.
So if anybody needs more time to consider, but I do believe that looking at the community center, because as I have said, everyone knows it is a well-loved, well-used building that is essential to this community, and we need.
And it's part of our wide area network.
It is. It is part of that. Rowan said, well, what about this?
So I guess what I'd like to do is see if we could have Administrator Yorkie pursue that exploration of the community center in addition to what work we've already requested from BKV, that we get that facility looked at.
I mean, yeah. Is that clear? I was going to ask if we needed more direction.
I'm seeing nodding heads, so, I mean, it doesn't need to be an official action, but if
No.
that's the board's desire, I'll do that.
Absolutely.
With the understanding, we all need to be very real about this, that construction would undoubtedly not happen this year. It is May of 2023. I think it's amazing that you're going to get a roofer to come in now that you just contact. I think it's great. But we don't need to rush this. Everyone is working. We got people working. They got roofs over their head. They're not leaking. Well, not everywhere. But we need to do it right, not fast.
Let's get a hold of BKV as soon as we can and hear more about the community center and its possibilities.
That is very helpful. One other thing I wanted to mention in terms of finding space in the near term for our overcrowding. I may have mentioned in this meeting before that Great Expectations School has a trailer that they're trying to get rid of. It's a classroom trailer,
Yeah.
basically a double wide. It actually, I went through it and it's got a lot of space in it. And so in terms of finding, and I'll just say right at the outset, there are a lot of variables in this equation. It's not just buying the classroom trailer, it's also the utility hookups, which that's a big wild card. That can be, could be a small amount or a very large amount, depending on where you put it and how close the connections are. You'd have to run internet out to it. There'd be a lot of issues, and it would certainly not be a long-term solution. But if we are not going to be building a building in the near future, I feel like we need to be looking at short-term options as well. And so I guess there's some time pressure on that because they need to, well, first of all, they've had a couple other parties interested in it, and I think there's one that may have actually put a bid on it. I'm not sure about that. And so, they need to have the trailer moved off the premises no later than the end of July. And so I will tell you, I'm not like super excited about this option. I see it as kind of like a real stopgap kind of measure. And, for however long we would use it, maybe a couple of years, then at the end of that, we'd have to find a place for it. So it's not, I'm not saying this is exactly what we should do, but I think it's an option that we need to consider and think about whether it's something that could help us meet short-term needs.
Commissioner Sullivan? I can
I was-
address that one. Oh, you're going to speak
I was going to
first?
call on
No,
Commissioner
it's okay,
Johnson
go
because I
ahead.
saw her hand up first.
It's okay.
By the way, the model of that trailer, I think, is called Stopgap.
Yes. It's 28 by 70. Those are the dimensions. I happen to know firsthand about that. It's just a thing, and it's the other party, a party that's wanting to move it. And that is the bid from a professional mover to move it, $40,000. And you'll need to pour a slab to set, pour a slab to set it on. You'll have to, I mean, there's a lot of additional costs besides the purchase price.
For sure. And it would have to be, I mean, you'd have to rework the interior to,
Then there's that.
yeah, so lots of costs that would go along with that. I'm not trying to sugarcoat that.
How many people can we stuff in the log building up at the community center?
Commissioner Johnson.
That kind of relates to my question that I just jotted down here. So, which positions or departments are driving this need that we need to solve this problem soon?
Soil and water is extremely crowded. They're in an office designed for 2, they have 5 people.
I get that, but they've been operating that way for
No, they haven't. They've
while.
been-
Well, they added new positions, and that's what I'm saying. I want to know which departments we've identified really need something right now, and that we need to spend $100,000 or whatever it might be to get them into something else immediately, or let's wait until we get back from BKV, what our options are, I haven't seen the absolute, we have to do this right now to solve this issue. I would like to see a list of positions and departments that you have identified the number of, and what they do, how it would work, where would be the best, maybe they don't have to be close to the courthouse. Maybe there's leasing space up there. But until we know that number or that information, we can't really come up with, should we buy a trailer? I don't know, should we or should we not? But I need to know more data behind that before I could be comfortable making that decision.
I think costs for the wide area network, and just from what I know about hooking up for sewer and water, you could be looking at $80,000 just for that, and maybe more. So,
yeah.
My recommendation would be, let's get some information from BKV. It appears to be a bid on that trailer anyway, and maybe here in a couple of weeks, we'll have information that we need to make that next decision, whether we need to look at that trailer or not. Other commissioners' thoughts?
Madam Chair, so apparently there is one other potential commercial lease option available that we have not looked into, and so that's another thing that we could explore.
Okay.
Well, and I guess just to broad stroke it, Public Health Human Services, HR, Soil and Water, well, law enforcement, but that's a different building. And then emergency I'm sorry?
EMS.
Yeah, emergency management. I think that, well, attorney.
Public Information Coordinator does sound like
touche, yeah, so there's a.
Well, if emergency management winds up at the law enforcement center, which I personally hope happens, that might free up a space for our information office.
Yeah. I think,
Go ahead.
I think the question is, are there people that work here that will not be able to do their job if they don't have more space now?
That's exactly what I want to know.
Well, I think everyone's doing their job, it's just how effectively can they do their job, right? So we're making it work, everyone's making it work, it's just, for how long do we want employees to just make it work? What impact does it have on the organization? Burnout, turnover, appreciation, quality of service, all of that. It's all part of the puzzle, and so weighing that is a difficult thing, but I like the idea of, giving the reins to BKV a little bit more to try to navigate that puzzle. I think that's really smart, and they might have a different take on our space needs, right? Or comprehensive.
Than any of us.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's why I want to say, I don't want to rush into a temporary solution to solve a problem that somebody's thinking is an immediate need. No, we acknowledge you're crammed into those places. We acknowledge, we have all said, we know we have space needs, we are working towards that. It's a slow process, that's the way government works. But I don't want to rush into a different decision to solve a need that maybe will be solved by BKV group in the next year. Next year? Maybe?
Next year, get started.
So that's what I'm saying. If there is an immediate need that I can't do my job because I need to know that information.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything cut and dry like that, but just for reference, like, the organization's been dealing for, 10 years with these, like, the capital improvement plan and space needs, this discussion's been going on for 10 years, straight up. So, we've been making it work for 10 years. We could make it work for another 20. Is that the right thing to do? And it's that whole balance thing.
Well, I think what I'm hearing is that we don't want to pursue the trailer at this time. We want to get BKV doing their magic for us.
I'm good with that. I just wanted to make clear that, I'm looking at all kinds of options and appreciate the feedback that, that's not something the board wants to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Are there, before we leave CIP, are there any other outstanding questions or concerns? Okay, not hearing any.
Oh, excuse me.
I shouldn't have asked the question. No, let's move on.
Commissioner White.
Here's the question. I went to the Hoveland Town Hall. Oh, I'll make a report on that later, but, who authorized the installation of DSL from CenturyTel or CenturyLink in the Hoveland Town Hall?
I don't know anything about that.
Neither does Brian.
I saw it the day that you and I walked
That's
in
the
for
first
the
time
wildfire safety meeting. It's like, what's this little green blinking light?
And we had never had that before. You don't know either, so why is it there?
I can't answer that, but it wasn't us, and DSL CenturyLink wouldn't have been our choice.
I know that. I know that, so who put that there?
Well, this kind of speaks
Somebody
to,
installed.
Madam Chair, this kind of speaks to some of the issues we've been having with some of our outlying buildings and the management thereof, and sometimes it's nice to have, people who live there managing it, but it's especially important that we connect all the dots and make sure the communication lines are going, because this isn't the first time that type of decision and without the county's knowledge has happened. Maybe not in Hoveland per se, but it's.
Well, I particularly have a hard time believing that the people that live in Hoveland have a need. We don't have a need for indoor plumbing.
Yeah, we didn't, none of.
The whole thing about, I spent 2 hours trying to get an answer from CenturyLink for something else yesterday, so someone else can call them and find out about Hoveland.
I'll delegate.
I want to ask Brady, we paying for it? Who's paying for it?
Oh.
You pay the bills for Hoveland Town Hall?
I'm not aware of that, Bill.
No, it literally showed up, and Commissioner White
I hadn't
had
seen
been
it.
in the building
2 days before.
Friday,
Yeah.
Thursday
Regularly.
before,
Whatever day
and
that
on
was.
Saturday morning it was there when we walked in.
It was a leprechaun.
I would echo Commissioner Mills' comments that there are a lot of wonderful benefits to having community members involved in looking after buildings, in managing them, in, scheduling events there. But it also creates a situation where things can happen that are not known to the county. It's our building, right? And these kinds of things can happen, and we don't know about them, and there are questions, and that's an issue. So,
Yeah, there's been
All right.
padlocks put on buildings.
Investigation to
Service
follow.
order, I mean, it's, yeah.
Oh, my. All right, well, next item on our agenda is to appoint an EDA board member.
thanks, Ron.
So Commissioner York, you want to just give us some background on this?
Commissioner, ooh, I've been demoted again. That's all right.
Administrator.
So, yes, so we have received a couple of applications for the county-appointed EDA board position. These are 6-year appointments, and that's something that's in statute. So if you're applying for the EDA board, you are committing to a 6-year term. Obviously, people who find themselves unable to complete that term, they can withdraw, and a temporary appointment can be made.
That's jail time though, right?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But we have two folks who have applied to fill a vacant seat on the EDA board. That seat was temporarily held most recently by Mary Somnus, and I'd just like to thank Mary for her willingness to serve in that capacity. We are needing a long-term appointee to that position, and so the two applications that you have in your board packet are the two people who have submitted or indicated their interest.
So just to share with the other commissioners, I had an opportunity to call and speak with both Peter and Tom, and find that both of them bring some really interesting things to the table. Peter, in his discussion, talked about, he had retired and moved to the county and wanted to spend some time finding out more about the county, what kinds of volunteer opportunities there were available, and how some of his skills. He was 33 years in the corporate world, working in the auto industry, and did a lot of cash management during that time. And he really felt that the revolving loan fund and the EDA were two different committees that he researched that would be a really good fit for him. He's met with Teresa, talked with her about the organization and the way things work, and is ready to take on responsibilities immediately, pending appointment of someone to that position. Tom Morris, I also spoke with him, and one of the things I found interesting about his discussion and his perspective is he talked about the fact that he feels it's really important to bring a local viewpoint to the EDA and talk about how the EDA benefits the people who already live here. What are the things that they do that support our community? And he talked about it's important that things that we do, events that we have are certainly for everyone, that everyone is welcome, but that what we build in our community isn't just built for tourists, it's also built for the people that live here. He said he would actually be interested in an appointment at the end of the year. We do have another vacancy that will occur December 31st of 2024 is the vacancy for Howard Hedstrom. And he would be interested in that as well, but would also be willing to step into a position right at this time. So I just wanted to share with you what my discussion had been with those two candidates, and would ask our commissioners here to talk a little bit about what they know and who all they've spoken to about these appointments and these individuals. And Commissioner Mills, I'm particularly interested, since you serve on the EDA, what you might have to share with us.
Just that, yeah, there'll be upcoming near future vacancies, so I appreciate the discussion that you had there. That's really helpful, and it kind of makes our decision easier in my mind. I don't know Mr. Clissold, but I heard he was on Monday Night Mix last night. I just missed it, so I don't even know his taste in music, but.
That was not on the application, so.
Okay, good. And I did encourage Mr. Morse to apply, and so I'm happy that he did that. I don't know Tom all that well, just know he has a strong community presence and know some of his takes on things in the local side. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable making a motion to accept, to appoint Mr. Clissold for this immediate vacancy, and it expires 12/31/29.
Commissioner Storley.
I would have a comment. I'm wondering, does the EDA like to have board members from the wider county, like north, south, east, west? I see Mr. Morrissey is County Road 6, and Mr. Cazol is Devil's Track. Is it important to have, as you look to the future, a wide representation?
That would be a decision that we would certainly make in December, when we would make a second appointment.
That's correct. It's just city county. That's the only distinct. We don't need districts for the EDA. Certainly a wide representation is very valuable, but yeah, it's just city county is the distinction.
And there may be other individuals that would apply for that December vacancy.
Yeah, I'd encourage that.
So we need
too.
to keep that in mind.
I was just going to say, geographic diversity, of course, is a good thing, but it can also be a barrier to getting applicants for committees. So where we do have committees that are
Where you have a
appointed by
6-year
district.
commitment, yes.
Yeah.
Also, I do want to emphasize my appreciation for Mary Somnus and the work that she's done as the EDA director, and really making the big push for our housing need and getting things done there, working with One Roof through the EDA, working with the HRA. She's on she's the chair of the HRA board now, and just her breadth of experience is so valuable. And talking with her actually the same day as I talked with Mr. Morse, just about some of our needs and dynamics, and confirming that she's not going anywhere. She'll still be here, and we can reference her and all of her experience, because that's.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because one thing I would like to do, and we typically don't do this, so I would like to, after we appoint someone, I would also like to recommend that we as a board, and I'd be happy to write the letter, write Mary a letter of thanks, because she applied for the position to cover till December 31st of last year, and she's continued to put herself out and be part of this, and I really think we owe her a lot of gratitude for doing that. But let's get back. So we have a motion on the table to appoint Peter Clissold. Is there support? Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And would the board be okay with me sending Mary a letter of thanks on her
Yes,
behalf?
please. Yes, please.
All right. Thank you. All right.
All right. Next item on the agenda is memorandum of understanding with the City of Grand Marais. This concerns our partnership in doing street maintenance within the City of Grand Marais. For folks who may not be aware of it, since 1979, there's been a service agreement in place wherein the county maintains or does snow removal on areas in Grand Marais north of Highway 61. The city maintains and does snow removal south of Highway 61. And it's been that way, again, since 1979. That agreement has never been updated. Last year, we started a process of updating that agreement, and where we ended up is we realized that in order to understand what the terms of the agreement should be, we needed to have data to make decisions about what is actually the allocation of work that the city and the county are doing. And so as part of that, we agreed to do a couple of things that are primarily outlined in Articles 2 and 3 of the MOU. And those are to keep records on hours that we're spending on various kinds of tasks, the materials that we're using to get those tasks done, and then also having better communication between the city and the county so that we each understand who's doing what and who's, like when the city comes to take salt sand from our storage facility, that there's a record of that. And so the important thing to know is that everything that's described here has been happening for the first part of 2024. So it's not as if not having this agreement or this memo approved has prevented that from happening. It is happening. My understanding is that communication between the city and the county has improved significantly in terms of like sharing information about who's doing what and who's using what. Part of the purpose of getting this done or starting this winter is so that we could start quantifying how much work we do in the winter. Well, we didn't have winter this year. And so that's something that is going to make it difficult really to use data from this year to determine, what's going on. And so assuming that next winter is more typical, we might need to do another round of data collection. But in the meantime, I'm really happy to report that communication between us and the city has improved, that we are collecting data as much as it's described in this agreement. And so that's the main thing. And, we're going to have to, this is not, we don't execute this MOU and then suddenly we're done. This is really an interim step to figuring out what the allocation of responsibilities and costs is so that we can have further discussion about what the revised service agreement should look like.
I'm just really glad that we're getting information and that communication is much better than it was. Commissioner?
Yes, thank you. I understand that we did not have as much snow removal as we could have, like compared to last year. But I believe that data is still really important to keep. That's how we do averages. Because, next year we might have an abundance. Or
right.
It averages. So I would like to see, because this was a new agreement, and there was discussion back and forth, making sure we got this right and realizing, we don't even know if this is going to work. We need to keep track of data, and then we need to come back again and tweak, if maybe. Or maybe we say, hey, we got it right the first time. So I would like to request that at some time, maybe June, July, I don't know, we get the data to date that has been collected, and then we sit down again with the city and everybody in the same room and talk about what went right, what could be improved on, what do we want to see, any changes before we move into the next winter, based on the information we've gathered, because we did talk about that when we met end of November, that we realized we didn't know everything yet. Let's gather data and get back together and make sure we're doing it right. So I think it's important to put that on the calendar.
Could we have Engineer Haas collect that data and come and report to us?
Yeah. And
Share
I was
initially the
thinking
data just with our group.
Maybe like end of August or something like that before next winter, so that we've got as much data as we can have to kind of inform that discussion. We can do it any time, but I'm not sure if we do it like early in the summer, I'm not sure there's going to be enough information there to really make a.
Would August be?
Well, I'm just thinking, that it was winter that we were really worried about wanting to get this done.
Right.
Because of winter and making sure we were all on the same page. I don't know that summer, there were some issues in summer, but it wasn't as, and I'm just thinking, I don't know, I have not talked to Lenny, I broached it with at Highway Advisory, but we didn't get into it.
I mean, the
If there's
data,
issues,
I'm
we need
sure
to deal
Robbie's
with.
got current data, so at any time, we can pull that and share it with the board.
But this is where it was a breakdown in communication that made this necessary. And I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page, that we still keep those lines of communication open. We have had a good working dialogue, I think, at our last meeting, and I just want to make sure that continues.
Commissioner, could you bring that up at Highway Advisory next month and just talk to Robbie and then get back to us?
Yeah,
And
that one got
maybe what a
canceled.
good time would be,
Just like winter.
That's right.
just like winter. All right.
And before you take action, just a follow-up item. So I am scheduled to meet with Molly and Sheriff Eliason and Mike Roth to do some planning for our next law enforcement service agreement meeting. That is in the works. So we're going to have that meeting this week.
I hear a fair amount about a number of these types of agreements from around the state between city and county, particularly with law enforcement. So I'm hoping we can reference some other agreements to help show appropriateness or service level needs and all that kind of stuff. But maybe you guys are all over that.
That's a great idea. And if you know of some counties that would be good examples, I'd like to reach out to them.
We just heard about one
Yeah,
that
we did.
disbanded.
I was trying to.
I have a collection of them
Yeah.
that that I collected a few years ago, but I should go around again and see what's still out there.
Yeah, because
Or
there's
when
been a
we-
number that were, there's new formations, and yeah, there's all kinds of changes. What, also, I think, can we apply for like an award for the longest standing memorandum of understanding, 1979? I can't find an older one, so pretty sure we get a gold star there.
How about we don't?
Okay, fair enough. Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the street maintenance memorandum of understanding with the city of Grand Marais.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support? Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right.
Updates.
Yes, just one. I feel like I've taken up enough time already, but Brady and I have recently met or had a virtual meeting with ClearGov, which is the company that produces the software that we're going to be using for budgeting. And we are starting to begin the creation of a budget book for FY 2025. There's going to be a lot of learning that we all have to do to make this work. Fortunately, I logged on yesterday, and we do have a lot of online training modules that we have access to, and also have a rep that we can contact with specific questions. But the walkthrough that we did of that software has me really excited about how this is going to work and how it's going to improve access to information for our residents, because there are lots of tools that can be easily accessed. There's an interactive dashboard where people can make different queries to understand like where taxpayer dollars are going. And that's the kind of tool that we have long wanted. And so, and I don't want to overpromise because, again, this is new for us, but I think it's going to be a huge leap forward in terms of providing access to information for residents.
Commissioner Mills.
I'm sure you've looked into this, but is there a way we can do it without a lot of learning?
That would be ideal, but
Probably not.
in a word, no.
Other updates?
I think that's enough.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Got some commissioner updates. Commissioner Hawkins.
Actually, it was a slow week, so I didn't, I guess it was just phone calls, and I don't have any meetings to report.
All right, thank you. Commissioner White.
Slow week, a lot of phone calls, a lot of conversations, trying to set up another meeting up in Grand Portage. And I'm never going to get to Grand Portage again, I think. One or the other, but there is the MnDOT signage ceremony this coming
Thursday.
Thursday morning. at Devil's Track. And the other thing is, Wednesday is the education thing in Grand Portage, but there's also a Hoveland Town Hall meeting at 5 o'clock with, drum roll, County Assessor Bob Thompson. He knows. I bought cookies. And he's coming at 5 o'clock. I expect a large crowd of people to be attending. So,
All right.
he readily said, yes, I'll come. And so this was the time he could come, so he's coming. So that's the big thing.
All right. Anything else?
No. Oh, I thought you were waiting for him to come.
I haven't even started.
All right, Commissioner Mills, go for it.
So I sat in for Commissioner Sullivan for the AMC board chair meetings, which when I was board chair, we did not do. I think this is an effort from, is it Terry Lefgren? That's, yeah, so that's really good. This is just for District 1, but that was really great. No revelations there, but just kind of general updates. And it's one of my favorite parts about some of our regional meetings is hearing from other commissioners in the region and what's going on, what's hot, what we should be looking out for, what solutions they have or obstacles and vice versa. So that was great. Thank you for asking, and I was happy to have that opportunity. I have been asked and I accepted. I had very slight hesitation, but then just ridiculous optimism and exuberance over joining AMC's Department of Children, Youth, and Families Intergovernmental Advisory Committee. And so this is a new department that is being split off from DHS. And I'm kind of taking a number of roles from a number of different state departments and putting them into this new department to really try to focus on children, youth, and families and the actions we can take there as policymakers. And so I signed up. I'm committed. I'm in it. However, I don't have the board's permission to be getting reimbursed from this, putting it on our list. And so I wanted to ask the board for that. And let it be noted that I already said yes, so you guys can vote me down, and I'll still show up. I just won't get paid for it. So there's that. Also, Cannabis Regulation Committee, co-chaired by Attorney Hicken and Sheriff Eliason, met for our first meeting, and that was great, just to meet, talk about different expectations and hopes and challenges that are seen, and you know, there's just so much that we're not going to know until session is over, and the same is true for the Department of Children, Youth, and Families too. There's a whole lot of we don't know, and the same is true for capital improvement plan as far as I'm concerned. We're going to have to see what happens at the end of the legislative session here. And then another thing to note we had a North Shore Collaborative meeting after a failed quorum the first go around. And there's been we've been doing strategic planning and lots of discussion about the efficacy of this group. A lot of firepower there for relatively small grant awards, but there's a lot of flexibility for those grants for very small organizations up and down the shore. It was brought forward by Commissioner Hoganson from Lake County to set aside 10 grand to go to mental health services specifically with the Lake County School District, and then also suggested that the Cook County School District could do the same. It was not requested by the Cook County School District, but with further discussion, could very, very effectively be used. Because as a matter of fact, they have state funds for this, but there is about a $10,000 gap. And so we voted to do that. The catch there is this really diminishes our ever shrinking pool of dollars for those smaller initiatives. And so that's a really big concern of mine. We committed to just 3 years of this, and then we'll see what happens. The funding has been decreasing for collaboratives around the state anyways, and so from other group members that have been in other collaboratives, they more or less disbanded, and I really didn't want to see that happening, and my fear is this is moving in that direction, but time will tell, and hopefully that won't get lost. Let's see, and then building committee, which we already spoke on there, so, and benefits and wellness, I don't think I have a whole lot to report on that, but I was hoping to just poll commissioners if there was any initiatives that we saw as worthwhile towards the benefit and well-being of our staff, to kind of bring those ideas forward and try to flesh them out. Right now, we're doing a lot of discussion and focus just on kind of our monthly efforts for wellness and exercise, get out and do the punch card and all those kinds of incentives, which is great, but I'd also like to do bigger initiatives, and I don't know, maybe sometimes that gets into labor negotiations, but I just like to try to take that bigger picture and try to think of, when you think about it in terms of where people spend their time, so much of it is at work, right? Arguably a third of our lives are spent at work. And so as employers, we have a very substantial opportunity to help the people who work for the organization. So want to give as much thought and recognition to that.
Thank you. I would like to come back to your additional committee on AMC and see if commissioners would agree to provide that as a per diem for Commissioner Mills.
I have a question.
Okay.
How often are they meeting, and is it virtual or is it in person? Is there?
It is all virtual, and the meeting is, it's just for 1 year, this Intergovernmental Advisory Committee. And let's see, boy, you touched on my weakness here, Commissioner Johnson, scheduling and time management. And it's not in this book. Mondays, it's for sure once a month. There are just the, I guess I maybe can relate it to kind of the NEMOJET structure, where there's like the local elected officials and then there's that broader group. There's going to be times where they want the kind of the core to be in that broader group as well, so it could be twice a month as well.
Would it be possible for you to give us a list of who has been asked to be and who the committee members are?
Yep, there's 3 commissioners.
Saying it's not bad idea, but I like to have more information before I vote on something.
Yep, no, I got it all. There's 3 commissioners. Sheila Cascaden and Terrell Clark are the other 2 commissioners. And so they're both pretty active in AMC and particularly in the realm of children and youth and mental well-being. Commissioner Cascaden has announced that she will not be running again, which is kind of a big deal for AMC and of course for her and her county. But beyond that, the only other person I recognized was Linnea Mersch from St. Louis County. I did not recognize anybody else. There was 3 members from the state administration, so it's kind of a hard hitting. I was warned that this is political, and I said, "Oh, okay, well, whatever." Happy to support children, youth, and families any way I can, but because it's a new state department, right? That's somewhat loaded. Let me pull up the email with, let's see here. There's Rena Moran, Stacy Hennon, Jody Wentland, Kate Probert, Bobby Jo Potter, Karen Sanis from Dakota County, Simone Bolin, Patricia Harrelson, and Suzanne Arnston. So I don't know any of them, but.
I'm just going to share. Again, Commissioner Mills, it could be a very important thing for you to give your opinion on, and I'm not saying no, but I would like to have this put on our next agenda with the information of what this is and who's on it and how Cook County is receiving benefit. I'm not saying it's not a good idea. It's not personal.
No, I don't
It's-
take anything personally,
I'm
except for
willing to-
compliments. I'll take compliments personally.
I would just like to have time to think about it and make sure that if Cook County is going to be represented on this committee at the state level, that I understand what it is I should talk to you about to say I want my viewpoint in there.
Yeah, and it's, no, that's absolutely fair, and it's not so much Cook County as progressive, children, youth, family-focused individuals will be represented at that level. But I do have a whole PowerPoint here I can share with James, and then he can forward on to the board.
All right, and then we'll put that on the agenda for the 28th. Okay, great. Thank you. Any other items?
No, ma'am.
All right, Commissioner Story.
Thank you. Several of those names are already on the, on the health board that I serve on. So you have a wide variety of people from all aspects that are already on the health board. Sheila being one who's been a big leader.
Yeah.
Attended the cannabis meeting. It was very good, a good kickstart. Every time I read the Tribune, there's new things happening, so I think as we progress each month, we're going to find out lots of new things to deal with in the county. Gitchigami Trail meeting, the updating on the trail in Lutzen is that they'll start with the bridge work. The bridges aren't very big, but the footings is what held it up. So now the footings will be here, they'll start the footings, and then hopefully by the end of July, first part of August, they will surface it. And hopefully by the end of September, they'll be gone out of the parking lot at the base of the Ski Hill Road. And that's owned by the DNR now, and I'll have some little discussions with them about the future use of that via Gitchigami Trail.
All right. Any other items?
Okay, if I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
You know, what was mentioned during public comment this morning about the emergency shelter in Lutzen, and they're waiting for a generator. Is the county paying for the generator? I was confused by what she was saying, because I was wondering how.
This is a topic that came up that I presented to the town board after we were without electricity for 29 hours. Put a little nugget in your brain. How about having this room being a shelter for winter? But how about for summer, if there's fires, whatever? So
Yeah, it's a good idea.
the town board has been talking and talking with Mike Keyport. And when we go back to Mr. Keyport about where are we with the generator, the comment has been, it's in progress. So he's getting that from FEMA. It's not from the county.
Okay, that's what that, I was
Yeah.
just wondering, I just don't remember it being discussed at the county level. I think it's a great idea, but I just wanted to know.
Mike just mentioned he was going to be pursuing it.
How we as a county could encourage that if we weren't really paying for it. I just didn't know how that worked. Thank you.
I remember mattresses. We discussed mattresses.
Part of it, too.
But it was a good idea. It's a great idea.
Anything else? All right. Let's see, we had our Bowser State Board meeting the very last week of April. It was after this group met, and Bowser at the state level did approve our Rainy River, Vermilion River, One Watershed, One Plan. That was fantastic. CCLEP has been meeting. They are paused right now with their search for an executive director. They're looking at different grant opportunities, trying to decide office configurations and kind of where they are headed in the future. So they're doing a lot of reflection. Firewise Committee has just been very busy talking about prescribed burns, getting ready for potential wildfires this summer. And Aaron has a very, very busy schedule between Lake County and Cook County with presentations and getting out to create additional Firewise communities. I was at the chamber meeting with Commissioner White, and we watched some of our youth, the Nordic Nature Group, do a presentation on the impacts of climate change to business, and that went very well, and it was really nice to see these young people stepping forward and getting involved in government, and they did a great job of kind of preparing for their audience, and I think Commissioner White, maybe you want to chime in.
They had definitely come prepared, and they had practiced. It was obvious. They did a pretty fair job of presentation.
Absolutely. All right. Then on the 27th, which Commissioner White referenced earlier, we had our first wildfire safety meeting in the county held at the Hovland Town Hall. We heard Aaron Mollenkling presented from a Firewise and Spruce Budworm perspective. We had Andrea Tofty share a little bit about how to create a clean room in your home or cabin so that you're protected from smoke and ash and all those things that we experience, whether coming from Canada or from right here in Cook County. And then I had an opportunity to speak and talked a little bit about emergency go bags and what to put in them. And then former Commissioner Svalison spoke to us as a representative of the Hovland Fire Department to talk about pre-evacuation and evacuation. And so that's kind of the model that we're using to present. We had a presentation in Tofty at Birch Grove School last week, and a number of them coming up. Andrea and I will be attending the Chiefs meeting on the 20th, just making sure that we can get a volunteer firefighter to attend each of the meetings that we're scheduling throughout the county for that wildfire safety. And then we'll finish finalizing all our dates. Soil and Water was very excited to approve Lake Superior North 1 Watershed 1 plan implementation funding, and their DNR capacity grant. We had interviews for land services. You saw the result, Jesse Johnson joining us again in land services to fill that position. And then we had the Planning Commission meet, and we'll see a couple of conditional use permits coming forward to us on May 28th, their last meeting of the month. And so with that, the only final thing I have is we have the Gunflint cleanup coming again. If any commissioners are interested in helping clean up the trail, we do this every year. And so there's an online place you can register to help clean up. And that's June 8th from 9 to 11, or you can do it ahead of time. But our Cook County Highway Department, as I mentioned earlier, comes along and picks up all the trash bags after that event, and it's a very, very successful event to clean up that well-used scenic byway. The last thing I want to bring up is May 21st, a week from today, which is our Committee of the Whole, but we also talked about training opportunities. And Attorney Hicken, do you have any updates for us?
Are you talking about the commissioner training? Yes,
correct.
with Rachel Teben. So we have all 5 commissioners available to start the commissioner training at the time we would typically start Committee of the Whole, but then stick around through 3 o'clock. So that's 4.5 hours. We'll break for lunch and share lunch.
Oh.
Haven't decided who's ordering the pizza or not, but we'll figure that out. Let me know if there's any last minute changes in your scheduling, but that's what we have. Rachel Tiemann is on board with that. For a location, I think we've secured just in the last couple hours, North Point down in Grand Marais, so that we can be out of this, our normal space, and be in a learning space.
Great. Well, if you can send out an email to all of us just with the details.
Sure.
And I appreciate all the coordination. It is not easy to get the 5 of us together, so very thrilled about that.
If you have accepted the invite I sent, it might be on your calendar already, but I will make sure the location is noted on there and send a follow-up too.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, we have a number of upcoming meetings that are listed for the remainder of May. We have our correspondence and memos, and then important recognition of staff. And so we have May staff anniversaries, Ty Backlund in our sheriff's office, 1 year. Rachel Schauer in PHHS, 2 years. Stephen Janessi in SWCD, 2 years. Tia Parks with the Highway Department, 2 years. Diane Burnett, Land Services, 7 years. Jason Hughes in the Sheriff's Office, 9 years. Troy Olm in Maintenance, 9 years. Elena Hansel, Soil and Water Conservation District, our Water Planner, 13 years. Allison Plummer in HR, 18 years. Kyle Oberg in MIS, 19 years. Paul Spry, Sheriff's Office, 22 years. Will Sandstrom in the Sheriff's Office, 23. Darcy Ziller in the Sheriff's Office, 26. Matching with Leaf Lundy, 26 years there. Wow. And Rusty Johnson with the Highway Department, 28 years. So some fabulous work has been done, and we so appreciate their service to Cook County. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. Is there support?
I support that.
Thank you, Commissioner White. We have a motion and support. Anything further? All in favor? Aye.
Hey.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned
I've got a
at
highway advisory
12:18.
listed for this
Thank you.
coming Thursday morning.
It got canceled though.